All right, we are live, and I have a very special guest tonight. He's waiting backstage, and before we get started, make a couple of announcements. First of all, say thank you to our moderator, Kashu Gesundheit. She does an excellent job, and I want her to know how appreciated she is by keeping our shows enjoyable and safe from the trolls and spam and all those other unsavory things that can go along with a podcast. I'd like to welcome everybody here and get started. If you're new here and you haven't already, if you'd like to check out my book, Kiamichi, Bigfoot, Investigating the Oklahoma Sasquatch. If you want to know some about my investigations into this subject, there's some of that right here. And that is in the link in the subscription. Also, my book, The Shampe, Terror Has a Name, which is a horror novel based on Choctaw, a monster in Choctaw legend. That being said, I'm going to jump right to it because our next guest, I know he is busy and he is taking time out to be with us tonight. And I want to welcome Kerry Arnold from Bigfoot Odyssey. How you doing, Kerry?
I'm good, man. How are you doing, Dave?
Hey, man, it's good to see you. Hey, thanks for taking the time to come and be with us tonight.
Of course, man. Of course.
I know.
I'm sorry I put Davis on in the community. I'll go fix that.
Well, that's all right. I'll answer Dave, Davis, David. Like I say, as long as it's not bad words or something, I'm okay with it.
Well, so the D and the S are pretty close together. So.
Yeah, you know, Davis. Matter of fact, just about 30 miles down the road is the town of Davis. So, you know, you're not too far off there. So what's been new since I was on your show here not too far back?
A lot of new stuff. Working on it really hard, actually. A lot of time, ton of travel, a lot of filming, and just for me, trying to get the story right, and then being out there in places. We've got 3 films coming out back to back.
3 like documentary films.
3 new Odysseys and 3. Actually, it's 6 films. It's 3 Odysseys, and then the investigations that we did on the back of those. So I did Mark and Melanie, Crypto Reality, got their story. Is going to be the first one. Well, it'll be our 14th Odyssey, but it'll be what's going to piggyback that will be the Impossible, the beginning of Impossible with question mark Impossible series, and it's going to be available at cryptoodyssey.com. So it's been a long time setting all that up. Just getting the website built. Eric Palikos from Media Palace is building that for us. Just a basic website, but that's where you'll find the films. And then what the films we put there are the investigations that we do in the places that we tell the people's story. So the Odyssey with Crypto Reality, there's a 5-day investigation shot overseas.
Okay.
And Donnie Miller's we just shot. I just got back here 2 days ago to West Texas, and then the 22nd I'll drive to Tennessee to the conference there in Gatlinburg on the 23rd. We'll do that, leave straight from there and go to Arkansas, film with Pam and Paul at their place for 2 days, and then go home.
Great. Hey, I've been seeing a lot of your stuff you've been doing down in Florida. Hey, Mark, there's our buddy Mark formerly from Southeast Oklahoma. He moved over to Arkansas. You've been staying busy down there in Florida. I've been seeing your stuff you've been doing down there. Now, are the Odysseys that are coming up, are they based down there in Florida, or are they just a wider range?
Donnie Miller in the Panhandle of Florida. We filmed his incredible story, the whole thing, where it was told, and being able to film out around his place, but where he took us to his 80 acres. It is so far back in the middle of nowhere. It's 9 miles in deep into the woods off the road. So that's where we were. No signal. We had to we were down in a creek bottom. It's like a dummy line that goes through, and then the creek bottom comes through. A beautiful creek, 2 waterfalls right there. It's just a beautiful place. And we were in that little valley there, Mark and I, for 2 days filming, and pretty interesting stuff went on. We lost all our thermal footage. So we've got another show planned for Mariana after Arkansas. So what we're going to do is go and film that. Then we're going to take a night, go back over to Donnie's, get some thermal footage for that film. So they're not going to come out in order. You'll get Pam and Paul's after this, and then Donnie Miller's, and then the Friars. They're also down in that area.
Okay. And I just want to say this. I'm sure most everybody in the chat and watching this is going to know who Kerry is. I just want to throw out Kerry makes a lot of documentaries with Bigfoot Odyssey and stuff. And I had the privilege of meeting with Kerry when he came to Oklahoma to Livewire, Mark's place, and done that. And Kerry, I think your documentaries put to shame. This is not the first time I've said it, put to shame the stuff that is passing for documentaries on like the Travel Channel and Discovery and stuff. And I say that because most of the stuff I'm seeing there, I can't really call it documentary as much as what would call it reality TV. And yeah, I mean, the respect that you showed, and I'm sure Mark there in Livewire would attest to it, the respect that you showed to everybody involved in the interview and stuff, I was very impressed with that.
It means a lot. It really does. And what you guys see is just what I would want to watch. Lynn and I both decided when we were going to do this that we would just make something that we would want to watch, and that's kind of how I shoot it. It has to make sense. It's not just a bunch of flashy stuff and transitions, and it's gotta. If there's a transition involved, it's there for a reason. But that was all. That was its own learning process, doing all that stuff. But dude, I'm 49 years old, and I pretty much decided that I can't wait for life to get any easier to start actually doing something noteworthy, and I might as well do it in the subject that I believe in. So here we are, 4 years later.
But yeah, and I was impressed that you weren't leading anybody on. You were just letting you let Mark have his say. You let me have my say. You let a lady in the woods have her say. Everybody that was there, you didn't lead anybody on. You didn't, and unlike the ones on television, there's no dramatic build up toward a commercial and then nothing when you come back. So,
yeah. Well, I don't know about all that. It's full of that one. That last one we did. It's the last Odyssey we did was with Mark Copeland. It's been that long.
Yeah.
And very hard hitting. I thought just being there.
Yeah.
And the way you talk about letting people have their say, I just turn the camera on and you guys start talking, and I just form my questions off that. But the Mark Copeland and the segments we got with everybody, it was one of my favorite ones to do. The last three, I think, were my favorites to do. Sisters of the Moon. That one was fun to do, actually.
So back to what's been going on in Florida. I've been seeing some of the stuff you're putting up where you're just filming from maybe even your cell phone and stuff a little bit while you're out there just listening in the woods with somebody else. Is there a particular technique that you use, or do you just go out there and see what comes to you? Or, I mean, what's the...
Well, down there, it's piggybacking off of what Mark and Melanie did for 7 years. Okay. They primed this area, and it was as simple as going out, doing something to get their attention, and then throwing apples. And they did it for months and months and months, and then it finally got to a point where they would drive up, and these things would be there peeking at them through the bushes. But that's pretty much what you're going to get. You may get lucky and get the body sticking out or the shoulder, but it just to catch them moving, it's almost impossible. So down there, it's a very special situation because of what they've done already. Now, I think it could be done anywhere. Going out and looking for them, you're talking about an impossible task. Just a mountainous task. I don't think they'd let you get close enough. They may mess with you when it gets dark. Which is what we've been experiencing in other places. But if you can get to a place that is viable, that you found sign or whatever, and just do something to get their attention. That's what I would say. Go out there and play the guitar, or scream and shake the bushes. You know, you might want to be careful being aggressive toward them. You know, they put Mark in his place, but that was the things that they did. They got their attention, and it was apples and peanut butter. They littered for years, just throwing plastic peanut butter jars over on this one place. But a lot of learning came out of that. I learned a lot just listening to Mark and some of the stories he told about doing all that. Is in the first year, which is, I can imagine most of the learning curve was, in the first year. But the story he told me and still tells is about how the way they would do it. The road went across this canal, right? And there was a levee going down one side, and on the other side it's like a peninsula, but they called it the island. And FWC calls it no man's land. But that's where they were getting from across the water these faces, you know, poking out, looking at them. And it wasn't just making faces out of the bushes. You know, they all had the same bone structure. They had symmetry, did catch some movement. But they would go to one spot. Apples, Melanie's yelling the whole time going in, apples, and waving her hand. And they could hear them, you know. So they get to this one place, throw half a bag, apples, a couple jars of peanut butter. They wrench the lid down on tight, you know, the red lid, crunchy peanut butter. Throw that over and just film, and then, you know, see what you get. Oh, that's Hunter. He's one of our police operators. But he had decided, because where they parked and where you come in, you pass by the beginning of that peninsula, the island, and he wanted to get in a place down there where he thought he might be able to catch them coming to get the apple, right? So he sends Melanie down, screaming apple, one day, and he finds it's a little cabbage palm, and they grow like this. So it's like a seat. So he got down and he gets on this seat, and Melanie goes down, and he's just got the camera still filming. And he watches her go down. She stops, throws the apples, throws the peanut butter, and, you know, 4 days in a row. Well, the fourth day, he sends Melanie down. He goes to go down there, and there's a red peanut butter jar lid sitting on the stump where he was sitting. Now, they were throwing them 300 yards down the way. And to me, that's just saying, you know, you're not fooling us. We know what you're doing. Right. You know, bring us more of this stuff. The way I gathered that.
So how, I know you find footprints and such when you're down there as well. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Your picture went away. How many individual Sasquatch do you estimate are in that area that we're talking about right now?
Wouldn't have a clue, David. There could be 1,000. I know this. Okay. We've gotten the same individuals on camera in the same place. If I had to guess, in the first area there, in this one area where they call the den, 20 plus, could be 50.
Really?
Sure. Oh yeah, man. just looking at the different individuals. But you'll see this in the new film. There's the same individual twice. You can tell it's him. It's 10 feet, shot for a couple of months apart. But he's got a pointed nose a little bit. His skin is kind of tannish brown. The brow is really symmetrical, and it's two different angles, but you see this is the same guy because it's in the same place. And then I got a third that has the same brow but a little bit different face, just to show that this is what we're looking for. This bone structure, this large night vision eyes raised high up on the head, long prognathic upper lip, you know, symmetrical, you know, and looking at you, something that's behaving like it's hiding and looking at you, not, you know, waving and looking all up here, and there's an eye here and kind of one down here and a nose. You know, that's the bushes. That's not what we're looking at here. And they're so hard to pick out and see. And we've probably put 1,000 Bigfoot images on the floor that we refuse to show because we can see what's there. But so many, just learning that, you know, how people have been looking at pareidolia for so long that that's what they're trained to look for. So we've kind of started outlining and showing, but the stuff that's going to go in that film is 40 plus images and 4 clips. The last clip is epic. I'll send it to you.
Great.
Where?
Yeah, I know it. I'll be looking for that. But when you did the last Odyssey there at Mark's place, I know I was going to Bigfoot Odyssey like every other day to see if that was up yet. So I'll be looking forward to this as well. Diane Fowler had a question for you. So that's a big clan. Is Bruce in that clan?
It's about 15 miles. Where the place I'm talking about, where they started, they've branched out all over that place since then. But no, where Banner is in a different place, about 15 miles from there. But it's all connected. Who knows who's related to who in there. And if it is hybrid, with human and whatever, then it's going to express even within the same family differently. You'll have brother and sister that look completely different, probably. It's that way with other animals anyway. So you can have 2 dogs. You can have a blonde dog have black and white puppies. I mean, and then the next time have 1 or 2 blonde and 1 or 2 a different color. I mean, just when it comes to hybrid and mixed breed in there, this is my theories. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how many are in there. They are in there. There's at least 5 for sure that I know we got the same images of. But there's something in there, Dave, that's scary. That it bothers me because it is so big.
Well, that's what you just said. When you say, I don't know, these are just my theories, it always takes me back to something you said on one of your other shows. We'll talk all day about what they are, just not if they are. That's right. And that's a good point. And when we talk about, you mentioned the word hybrid, I'm like you, I don't know. But I think, well, what if they're just a totally separate species of their own that's always been there, or as long as us?
Sure.
There's so many possibilities to explore, and I like to hear them all. I know you do as well. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say science it's so subjective. Things get proven and disproven. I say proven in the eyes of consensus anyway, which is normally how science works. Whatever consensus is what the facts are. When someone blows that away, then that's becomes consensus. It's the same way with the Bigfoot subject. I think, when you talk about facts and what they are and the things they do, I really, really quit bothering myself so much with that stuff because it wasn't going to get us anywhere. It hasn't yet. The only thing I think will work is having more people aware of the possibility. That way, when they're out there, they experience something, they can at least go there and consider it. And it may save them. It may save them, that sudden moment of realization that I think really impacts people so much. As many as I've talked to, the lady you had on here the other night, it's such a crash on reality when you actually see it, that it affects you. Not just going forward, everything you've ever done, it affects you going back because you think back. Other situations and things start to come around. And what did you explain away? I felt really stupid and angry at myself in the beginning for not paying more attention and recognizing what was going on around me, actually. But that's the level of disconnect. That's the level of disbelief involved in this very taboo. It shouldn't be. It should be common knowledge subject.
Yeah. Speaking of the lady last week, I know you said you haven't watched that interview. Anybody that did not see my interview with Tanya Kordek from Tallahassee, Oklahoma last week, I highly recommend to watch that. There are technical difficulties in the middle of it because she has that local Tallahassee internet and it was messing up quite a bit, but started about minute number 8 and I've got all of her reaction. And she said the thing that when she saw, she was only 30 feet away from this and it stepped out into the road. She was walking where she could see it and just see the emotion. I asked her, I said, what did you think? She said, I thought it would kill me. And as we talked, she didn't feel any aggression from it. She said just the sheer size of it, she knew if it wanted to, she didn't have a chance. It looked at her and it went back into the woods. But she said the thing that got her, other than just the strangeness of it, was it did not look like what it's portrayed in a lot of these documentaries as a big ape. She said its face was very human-like. And, said it stared at her for a little bit and went back into the woods. So I know we got a lot more people in chat than we did last week. And I'm sure there's people that haven't seen it. Just bear with the technical difficulties. I promise you it's worth seeing. And Kerry, I want to know some more about this really neat camera you've got now that reaches into the dark and just, I mean, I want one.
You can get a version of it for about $4,500. That does about the same thing. The image quality, what you pay for in the lens is the glass, and when you get sport glass is better. Apparently, they charge more for it, so I hope it's better. What we got was a Canon R6, a full frame mirrorless camera. And the reason I did that, Chris Reinhardt recommended it because the sensor is so close to the lens. When you put your lens on, even if you put a bridge or an adapter on, it's still a very close and a very large sensor. And it works the same way your eye does. It just converts those light and color images into the pixels. But the lens is the big deal. That's what's doing it. Is we wanted a camera we could get a really high ISO, which is how much you can lighten up and take out shadow. Excuse me, my drink got me. But the lens is a Sigma. It's a 600 millimeter lens, and it's about 14 inches long, fully extended out. It's about 20 inches long. It's huge. The whole rig weighs like 16 pounds. That's without the tripod. So it's heavy. So I can imagine what we look like walking out there with this massive thing. It's the same thing you see on NFL sidelines. The reason they have those so they can get a clear shot of a face 100 yards away. So it only made sense to apply that same logic and getting a large lens that would reach out there to take out shadows. And we caught a 10-pound bass on the first cast, man.
And that got me wondering. I think I might have even mentioned this to you one time. And Kerry was texting me a lot of these pictures, like in maybe not real time, but the day after. And by the way, Kerry, I appreciate that, being able to see those firsthand. And put it honestly, I was blown away by a lot of those. And it made me wonder, down where I go into the Kiamichi Mountains, if Kerry was there shooting that camera into the woods, what might be out there that I'm not aware of? It kind of gave me food for thought, because I've had experience down there. As a matter of fact, Cornell's has family visiting, so he wasn't able to come on here tonight. But when he came down and had experienced that area as well, I just thinking, man, if Kerry was down here with that camera, what might we pick up in those woods? And would I still want to go down there by myself as often as I do? So
we'd love to go. Absolutely. We could do the David Wilbanks Odyssey.
Now this year, this June has been unseasonably hot here, a lot of 100+ degree days, and I just haven't gone out there this year yet. But looking forward to it.
I'll tell you what, the Florida Panhandle, it was hot. And Donnie Miller, that's a man right there. You won't follow him around all day.
No, I hate really hot weather. I was on somebody had me on their podcast the other night. We had Cornell was there up in Massachusetts, and there was another fella up in British Columbia, and they were wearing jackets. And down here where I'm at, it's 100+ degrees, if I ever leave Oklahoma, I'm going north for sure. Um, so that new camera lens you got, that's just for still shots. That doesn't work for video.
Oh no, no. We shoot video at 100 frames per second, slow motion.
Wow.
In 4K, we shoot 100 frames per second in 4K, but you have to have a card. Now, that was another thing that I learned was you can have the finest pen in the world. You need some good paper to write on. It's just the same analogy. You know, it's the $8 million chandelier hanging from an $8 chain deal. You know, you want to get something that's going to write on. So we got the cards are like $300 for a 128 gigabyte card, but it's 300 megabyte per second rewrite speed. You need something that's going to write and work, you know, with your equipment. There's so much more to it than just getting like a 4K camera and then just going to get the cheapest PNY card. Don't get those, by the way, and throwing it in there and, you know, expecting, you know, excellent quality. What we were trying to do was get detail from a distance because we could catch them on camera 100 yards away, no problem. But there was still some ambiguity in it, as much as it shouldn't have been. And for us, there was none. But for, you know, anybody else, it just wasn't convincing enough. But when you can see the detail, the split in the brow, the wrinkles in the forehead, the lines in the hair, the sticks in the hair, and you see that symmetry in that face, and it's behaving like something hiding. It's 10 feet tall and just, you know, a massive individual. That's what we searched for when it came down to equipment and how to get that stuff, or the professionals using it. How do we, you know, when we get this, I had watched so many tutorials on YouTube and just taking notes from Matt Larson, who's a professional photographer, Chris Reinhardt. Those two guys right there helped us out a lot with that particular equipment. But it's working so far. So we've only been out, you know, there, and then what we got at Donnie's, and I don't know what we got there yet. We haven't reviewed it. So.
Okay. I just want to say, you folks in chat, if you have any questions that you want to ask either Kerry or myself, please put them in caps. I try to get to all of those, and if I miss you, it's not on purpose. But like I say, just put those questions in caps if you have any for Kerry. Kerry, have you seen, speaking of, I know you get a lot of emails and such through Bigfoot Odyssey. Is there any new findings or new accounts that's come out recently that stand out as impressive outside of what you're doing yourself?
I'm so ignorant to what's going on now. It's a shame because people send me stuff all the time, and I'm so sorry. Something's caught in my tooth here. I like when people send me stuff, and usually I get a chance to check it out. But I've just been going and going and going. I'm just example. I left here to drive home 18 hours 10 days ago or 12 days ago, whenever it was. Went home, rested for about 6 hours, got up, spent all day packing, getting ready to drive to Florida. So that was almost 20 hours on the road. Got there, camped out, freaked out for 2 nights. I was not myself in that place. Drove back to Mississippi, stayed for a while, 5 days, rested up, and then drove back out here 14 hours. So it's just been a lot in between. And when I rested. Linda makes me put Bigfoot down. She does, because it's if it's not emails, it's messenger, it's
Right.
text, it's phone calls, or I've got to show the plan for, or it's or spend a few hours editing, getting things put together, having to film outside the house, like the intro for the new Odysseys. I did all that stuff, the advertisements and sneak peeks and previews for Impossible. All that stuff's filmed around my house. So that's kind of, I just haven't had time to check out anybody else's stuff, and I feel bad about that, but it's the sacrifice that I made doing what I did do before and still keep working. even though I shortened that time and extended my off time to go and do this, because I'm tired of sitting and watching everybody else try. So I'm going to try myself.
So you went down, you said you camped out and freaked out. Um,
Yes, sir.
so, I mean, other than just the strangeness of having these creatures around you that you know they're there, did you ever feel threatened?
No, but for me, that doesn't matter. For me, it's like where we were out there in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
And for 2 days after, I was so hyped up. I talked like I was trying to sell something. And I caught myself doing it a lot. And it took me a couple of days to get. It's so hard to explain.
I know exactly what you're talking. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I'm not a small guy. I'm a pretty good sized fella. There's very few things that I fear in this world, and so I'm not macho by any stretch, but that's not it. That's not the problem. I know I've got nothing on them. It's being in your truck, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have a diesel, so I'm idling. Got the AC going, so I wasn't totally completely roughing it, but had sweated out a gallon or two that day walking with Donnie Miller. But just seeing it 2 o'clock in the morning, fires going, Mark's wherever in his tent or over by the fire, whatever he was doing. But I just sitting there resting for a little bit and imagining it's just something coming up and putting his face in the window. And I couldn't not think of that in that place. Mm-hmm. The second night, I didn't want to do that, so I didn't go in my truck at all. Mark and I, we sat around the fire, filmed ourselves doing segments, talking, listening, and a pine cone, a stick with 2 pine cones connected to it, doesn't drop. There's no pine tree around us within 30 feet. We measured, but it comes in this way, and we're filming. We're pretty sure we caught it on camera, and it hit right by Mark's foot, and he jumped up around the other side of me and said, "They're throwing rocks at us, man. They're throwing rocks." I jumped up with the bright light, 18,000 lumen flashlight, and lit up the whole area. There's nothing there, obviously. Pull out the thermal. We did catch some things on thermal at a distance, but we lost it all. Every bit of it got erased or something.
Interesting. Tammy Schneller asked, if Kerry brings that camera to your location, sees things, can you go out by yourself? I'd like to say, yeah, I will, but I think too, to be totally honest, depends on just what we see, I guess. But yeah, I think I would. I've seen something down there when I was by myself. Of course, it was what I perceived to be a juvenile. It wasn't very big, and it wasn't all that close to me. And I went ahead and stayed the rest of the night that night. But yeah, that's a good question. I've often been accused of my curiosity outweighing my good sense, and I generally don't argue with that. Let's see, what else here, if I got another question there.
Well, that's it though, isn't it, Dave? I mean, there's a sacrifice that has to be made. That's what I tell myself. I've got to sacrifice these sensibilities and get over myself, because I used to stay in the woods by myself all the time.
Yeah, there's our friend. Just how big a boy are.
He knows.
Well, I've met Kerry and his friend Brad Hatcher, which Kerry. I've been trying to get Brad on the show some night. He said he would. Our schedules just haven't matched up yet. But as Kerry knows, I'm not that big a guy. I'm like 5'9", about 150 pounds. And Kerry, he towers over me. So I was jokingly said, Bigfoot would have to be a pretty big old boy to tangle with Kerry out there. But it's Kerry. It's just the strangeness of it. We're out there looking for something that, by all accounts, should not be there, yet we know it is.
Well, that's
And
just it. That's
and
it. You just said it. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
and the how, the fact that something of that size and the number that has to be out there, especially down there where you're at, how do they avoid us? I mean, they can't be just an undiscovered monkey. Cannot be.
No. Okay, well, let's set aside the fact that they have help. But you said it.
Set aside the what?
The fact that they've got help from whoever is helping to keep these things under wraps.
Okay.
Put that aside. You said the very thing. It's amazing, unbelievable. It shouldn't be, because it should be common knowledge. That is the problem, is that it's viewed as unbelievable. And another thing, and you're just, I know you're asking the straw man questions that most people ask, but we tend to anthropomorphize other things, especially something man-like, that is going to have our limitations. And everything about them just screams otherwise. Everything we hear about how fast they are, even the big ones, cartoon fast is what I hear a lot. Just here, gone, that quick. When you have that, and probably no telling how much stronger than us they are, can manipulate their environment, can go through places we can't get to, will more than likely sit back 100 yards away and watch you through a hole in the leaves like this, where you're never going to see them. You start their way, they just get further and further away from you. This is the only thing that seems self-evident to me, because they do exist. So what else is it? It has to be that they've got built-in camouflage, which suits an ambush predator, emotional intelligence, the ability to probably read us very well, our notions and tendencies. They've watched us long enough. We fumble and bumble around in their environment. We are nothing to them, insignificant. They should be indifferent to us, but we're probably entertaining nonetheless. But the fact that they are out there, when you ask yourself and you look at it from that point of view, then you can start to come up with these answers a little easier. If you're not falling back on, well, they just don't exist. That can't be. I've had a researcher tell me it can't be that big. I would have seen it. Really? Come on, man.
You know,
we can't lose our objectivity here.
And you said they maybe can read us or whatever. Well, you know, we see that in the animal kingdom. I mean, if you've been around, a dog can sense in a person whether we're a friendly intent, if we're scared. Horses the same way. Anybody that's rode horses. So why wouldn't these be able to? Again, these are just thinking out loud. Somebody made the comment, and I have people, especially here lately, I have a lot of people come into my shop here and ask me questions. And some person asked me one day, well, why haven't they evolved? And I just off the top of my head, I said, why would they? Because, okay, take the religious stuff out of it. Say from the scientific perspective, when does evolution take place? It's out of necessity. So if these things are already perfectly designed to live a life as they do in the elements, why would they need to?
Hey, look, if evolution on a macro level is real, and I say it isn't, adaptations and micro evolution and things adapting and changing, but something changes from one thing into another. There's no real evidence for that. Even in the fossil record, there's no transitional species for where all these things came from. They're just layers of strata, with this era and this era. And, they put millions of years on it. Could be that. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know how old things are and who to listen to or believe there, whether they're 6,000 years old or 4 billion years old, doesn't matter to me. We're here now, flying around through space on it. And the Sasquatch people are here with us. So if you look back through history, a lot of the things that were lost probably you got to go beyond Bigfoot, because Bigfoot goes back to 1958 in a headline from Oregon. We're talking about
Northern Cal.
Yeah. Was it?
Yeah.
Anyway, the wild man,
Mm.
if you look at that, and especially through Europe and all the depictions of these people with hair all over their body, not ape faces, human faces.
Yeah.
And what happened, how they were hunted down. King James, 1612, 1613, had ordered it, wanted them run out. This was I can't remember what it was. It was in something that I had read. And there was a video on YouTube about it. But there's a lot of stuff out there if you look into ogres and trolls and make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's, to me, it's all the same thing. These things have been in history. They've been turned into myth and legend because we've domesticated ourselves so much from the wild. The closest we have are the Native Americans and First Nations people. And that's why we can go to them and get their oral traditions, which of 80 plus major tribes, just Native Americans, not First Nations, 80 plus tribes, 400 offshoots, all have a name for this creature. And the stories they tell about them are different, which would lead me to think that maybe there are different types and different species of maybe a species and a subspecies or whatever, a hybrid of the species, and how that mix goes. There's 1,000 ways to think about that.
Right. Well,
but it's just because of that behavior. But the Native Americans were all the same, and they didn't have the same behavior either than each other. They all were completely different, even had different languages. So I imagine Sasquatch is probably the same.
And a point that I've brought up many times is if the Pacific Northwest Native legends are correct about the occasional Indian maiden being taken captive by one of these creatures and producing young by it, they have to be very, very closely related to us for that to happen.
Same chromosome.
And as far as different species, I mean, not all people are alike. I mean, we've got European folks, we got black folks, we got Asian folks. There's a huge variety of people just among us, so why not with the Yeti or whatever in the Himalayas, which seems to be very different and physiologically from what we have over here. And I want to get to some of these here. This is a good point here. Do you suppose they have a ramped up immune system that protects them from snake bites and tick bites? I would think they pretty much would have to. Kerry, speaking of that, down there in Florida where you go, I know that is home to the massive eastern diamondback rattlesnake, cottonmouth, coral snake, copperhead. Have you had any close calls with any of those venomous reptiles when you're down?
No. But
really?
I mean, even if we did, that's child's play.
Snakes, well, I mean, you grew up around it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, same here. But
there's alligators, 12 and 10-foot alligators that you really have to worry about, and 300-pound razorback hogs that will hook you and throw you in the air and hook you while you're in the air, and then turn around and come back and strafe you and lay you open.
Yeah, we have those. We have those here as well. Here's a question for you, Kerry. Where's the best place to see your images, Kerry?
Hit me on Facebook Messenger. I'll send you all you want.
Okay.
Or you can go to our channel and watch some of our films. But a lot of what I put in the films, it's clearer if I were to send it to you. So if you guys just go to Kerry Arnold, you'll see me and Linda there on the picture. Kerry Arnold on Facebook Messenger, and just message me, and I'll send you what I got.
And Kerry, that's a good example of what's different now than back in the mid to late 90s, even into the early 2000s, when I was looking into this. Back then, you had these different research groups. None of them would share information like that. None of it. This is a new thing.
Where are they now?
It's a good thing. I'm sorry.
Where are they now?
Well, some of them make reality TV shows.
Well, there you go. It's all in how the definition of documentary is just disseminating factual information. You can decide for yourself whether it's fact, but this is how we're treating it. That's what a documentary is. When you do the down the middle, like a TV show, the protagonist, antagonist, these people are for it. Then they'll show you 10 people that don't believe or are against it and all their reasons why it shouldn't or doesn't exist.
Right.
Sorry, we're not doing that. We know better. We're trying to teach these people better, not confuse them as to maybe the possibility from our perspective. No, they're there. Believe it or not. Just be aware.
Yeah, here's a good question here from or for you, Kerry, from my friend Brian Terrell, who has a Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations here in Oklahoma. Can you tell us some stories of strange encounters that Kerry has had that baffled him or that he found peculiar?
Well, the main one that comes to mind is Mark Barton from Trail to Bigfoot. He came on our show, and I think it's got like 100,000 views. That's the most peculiar and strange thing I've ever heard. I think there's a lot of personal stuff going on there with him in that area and having run-ins and how all that stuff works. It's there's some paranormal stuff going on there for sure. But the place we just left, Donnie talked about glowing orbs, just not bright, golf ball size, out in the woods, 50, 60 yards, floating through the trees. Now, we were anxious to see that. We didn't, but we were packed down in the middle of nowhere, essentially. The more strange and bizarre things are, to me, like mind speak, the people I talk to that have these things talking to them in their head. And they seem to be intelligent conversations, not just give me food or whatever. Right. It's usually for either some kind of protection or warning. And maybe this is happening. I've never experienced it, but I do know we are collecting a lot of ambient EMF. We get huge spikes, especially down in Florida, that can have an effect on you beyond infrasound that will drain your batteries, make you hear voices, make you feel like you're being watched, make you feel sick, make you hallucinate, see lights. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but there's an actual possible explanation for how some of these things are truly happening out there. Maybe it is that they can talk to you in their head, and maybe just not everyone can receive it. Maybe they're talking to us all the time, and there's just a few people that happen to tune into that frequency once in a while. It could very well be that too. I'm willing to accept any of this as fact if we could ever figure out if they're facts or not.
Right. Well, and if we're honestly investigating it, we have to listen to all of it. I mean, then we can, pick it apart and decide whether we think it's real or not. But regardless, if somebody is reporting it, we need to document what's coming out. What do we got here? Running those. Okay,
well, it's like you said, David. People that are holding evidence close to their chest. To me, there's only one reason for that. You're trying to sell it later somehow. We want to put it all out there. Now, if we sell you something, it's going to be a whole film. It's not just going to be here's an image here. And you'll have a choice whether or not you want to buy it, like anything else. But you have to be transparent. Just throw it out there. Your name is on it. If someone else claims it, let them all know. No, he didn't do that. Here's the story of how I got this. Put it out there for everybody to see. Now, we've got a few things that people haven't seen. They've seen the still image of Banner, like I sent you, but haven't seen the clip. It's 1,200 frames plus. It's at least 1,200 frames of this guy. It's more mind-blowing than it should be. Like I said, it should just be here, another Sasquatch. Yeah, that's Todd Sears now. Todd Sears got some Strangeland is a good name because he has got, he sent me some pictures and I was looking at him as like an orange orb outside. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then he takes a picture of it from inside and it's below the windowsill. All you see is half of it. It's outside the window, below the windowsill, in the daytime. It's in the evening.
Wow.
There's still light out. An orange basketball size, or maybe volleyball size. And that's just one of the weird things he's got going up on there at Newfoundland, is where he is. Yeah. So yeah, there's some bizarre stuff for you right there.
You know, I heard, I have, in one of these gentlemen, David is, well, he was in chat earlier. Was telling me some of the, in the Comanche folklore, or not even folklore, but his mother was in here telling me that in conjunction with the Native American little people, sometimes they would see these orbs in conjunction with that. And that's the first I'd ever heard. Of course, I'm not very familiar with that folklore surrounding the little people in Native American, but they was linking that with seeing these orbs. And that's very interesting. People are seeing those, but I don't know how they tie in with the Bigfoot mystery. Thoughts? Yourself,
we hear this term juvenile a lot, and I always wonder, how would you know that it's a juvenile even if you saw it? You know, my email just opened up. Even if you saw it and it was small, I mean, probably safe to assume that it's probably a young Sasquatch, but it could be full grown. We don't know enough to know that that's what that is. That is a Sasquatch. We don't have enough images of their face, seeing their face, seeing their expression. That's why I thought what Mark and Melanie were doing was so important, as far as something convincing. I mean, but the things come out, you know, the lashes come out. You got people out there in masks, but at least they're saying that. They're not saying it's the bushes. They can tell,
right?
But that's nothing back there. And then you get it to blink, or you get it to turn its head a little bit and move. And that's a big deal with these creatures, especially when people are around. For them to move, what we've found is, what we think they're doing is they'll hold sticks and limbs in front of their face or put their hand up. Mark's got one. It's going to be in the Odyssey. This thing is sitting there, and you see the eye. You can see you see the glare off my eyes? So you see this eyeball here and the glare off of it. And then the next, he pans back and you see 4 fingers, and it looks like gorilla fingers. That's what it looks like. And you see this thing's got an apex head, and there's another, look like a baby behind it, but it's just sitting there in this bush right here, 20 feet away. It's filmed with an iPad, so it's not the greatest image. An old iPad. The new ones are good. Right. But that's
well, this is a gentleman I was telling
stuff.
David Perkins. I interviewed him on the Tuesday night show here a couple of weeks ago, and he says many people in my family saw orbs all at the same time, so it's witnessed by multiple people, and that's
I'm not saying they aren't.
Right. They're just, what are they? That's
I've seen an orb. See,
I have not. I would like to. I'd probably go chase it.
I saw an orange ball just like Todd in Hobbs, New Mexico. There's all kind of weird lights and stuff in New Mexico. I was out in the desert, sitting on a battery, tank battery. So there was H2S everywhere. So I was in my truck watching SCADA, and I could see it was way off, maybe 1,000 yards. I thought somebody with a lantern walking, just the way it was moving. It'd move a little bit and then kind of pause and move and pause. I was like, somebody walking with a light? I watched it for a while because it's so dark out there that you could see a light 1,000 yards away easily. Well, it just kind of fades out and stops. And I got out of my truck, and 5 seconds, it came on again. Way, like a full 80 degrees to the left, 60 degrees. Had moved really quick, a long way. And about that time, I heard a small engine, and it was coming from above me. And it's getting closer and closer and closer. And I look up, and it's a drone, about 15-foot wingspan. No way anybody was in it, but it was like an airplane drone with a propeller, square wings, without a light on it. And that's illegal, care who you are.
Right.
Especially in the oil field. So what it was, I don't know. Somebody's spine, probably. They do stuff like that. But it just seemed maybe it was a coincidence. But that was, I've seen orbs. I know there are people that see them. They film them, weird lights going through. No, all I was saying is a lot of the stories that I hear when people talk about, especially these things together, the mind speak, seeing the orbs and the lights, feeling sick or weak, feeling of being watched. That's a possible explanation because we've detected it in places out in the middle of nowhere in this sweeping RF radio frequency where it just goes up and then down. It's not any more powerful. This is a different frequency. It just like the frequency's up and then the frequency's down, and maybe it is more powerful. I don't know. I don't know that much about it, but no, there's strange things happening out there, weird energies that we can't see that can affect us. So I think it should just be a consideration as a possibility. Don't leave it off
that feeling of being watched we all get. I've always thought that's kind of a holdover from a time when we were much further down the food chain than we are now. Like a defense built in us. The other stuff, I've never experienced anything regarding what I consider Bigfoot activity that borders on anything supernatural personally. Now you made a good point earlier about when people see a small one, they just assume that's a juvenile. And you're right. We don't know unless, one of the reports that I had, a woman saw a larger one leading a small one away that's showing interest in her by the hand. And I think that's a pretty good indication that might have been a parent one.
Sure. Yeah.
But now the small one that I saw across that creek from me was, and I don't know if this has anything to do with age or what, it was a grayish black in color. So, I mean, that may have nothing to do with age or what, but it did stand
but
out.
It could.
It was odd, it could.
That could be the thing with the gray and white hair is that they're just old. But I'll say this: Shaquille O'Neal and Spud Webb are both human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Should it be any different for them? Maybe it isn't, but there are bigger deer than others and bigger bears than others. And, it's genetics. Yeah. So I just thought it was reckless to just blurt out. If you saw just that, it was a juvenile. Okay. Well, what leads you to believe that? The size? We don't know enough to know that that's a juvenile. Maybe it's a different thing that's full grown. We just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the one I saw, it was at the most 5 foot tall. I said it was around 4 foot, maybe 5. Was not big at all. But it just, as soon as my eyes locked on it, it shot out of there right through the woods. And it did not make any noise when it went through that brush, which I was like, my gosh, that thing was quiet and fast. Like you said earlier, cartoon fast. That's a good way to put it,
Yeah. A glimpse. That's what most people get. A glimpse. I'd say 90% of encounters, nobody ever sees anything. It was getting thrown or heard.
It was stationary and I just caught it out of the corner of my eye. I was getting things out of my truck, trying to get things, get out and set up before dark came. It was, fading light. But as soon as I caught it out of the corner, when I focused on it, it was gone. It just shot out of there. And
there's probably a lot of people watching that could say the same thing. David,
and if you have an encounter like that, send it to me, send it to Kerry. I know he makes that appeal all the time. He wants to hear your encounters. I do too. And if you have,
I want to come to your house and film.
Yeah, sometime.
I want to come tell your story. That's what I'm telling. I'm telling this to everybody. That's what I want to do. I'd like to get you on a live show. Fine. The reason we did the live show so we didn't have to travel so much. We could get people on telling their stories, but we're back at it. So
I'd like to do it like early spring next year or something. Right now it's just miserable hot, and I'm not as acclimated to the heat as you are apparently. But
I'm acclimated to dry heat, and with the West Texas heat, 115, 120 degrees ain't nothing when there's no humidity.
It's just, but here it's warm like out. Swimming.
Yeah, you're not sweating at all, or at least it's not bothering you because it's evaporating away immediately.
Right, right. Yeah, my grandfather back during the Depression, he went to Southern California and he worked out there. And he was talking about how hot it was. He said, as long as you're drinking a lot of water, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
So, hey, does anybody, I don't know how quick Kerry's got to go or anything. We've been going about an hour. Does anybody have any questions for Kerry? Here's a good one. My friend Brian Terrell said, I had a report of a Sasquatch that had dwarf characteristics.
There you go.
That's interesting. See, just having these conversations, you get some information that didn't have any idea about before.
Again, let me say this. I think it depends on who it's coming from. If you're a researcher and a well-known researcher, the facts shouldn't be so loose. Now, if you're just somebody that said, hey, I saw one, it was a juvenile, that's just an indicator that it was not huge to me. Mm-hmm. So there's a difference there. There's a spectrum, so to speak. I think that, the researchers that are into it, that are presenting information, try not to be so loose with the facts, because you'll garner more respect and credibility if you can just tell what you think, but assert it in that manner. Not like this is what I saw, so this is what they do.
Well, yeah,
I don't see the value in it.
It's a mystery. I've said this before. Be very wary of anyone that tells you they are a Bigfoot expert. I'm very convinced there are no experts. And anyone that says, if you give me X amount of dollars, I will take you out in the woods and I will show you a Sasquatch. If there was a good money back guarantee, maybe, but nobody that's doing that is. I mean, would you even think about doing that, Kerry? I mean,
I wouldn't do it. No, but I don't clown on anybody else for doing it. Look, if somebody wants to pay somebody $5,000 to go into the woods, more power to you. You have more disposable income than I do. So I don't really fault anyone for doing that, because there are people out there that want to do that have that kind of money that will pay that. I'm not going to do it because I would rather not try to convince one person. I want to get something that's going to convince a lot of people as fast and as many as possible. So if I was hurting for money and it was an option, it might be a thought, but it's just not part of that's not our focus.
Yeah. And let me be clear. If you're taking off work to take somebody somewhere, I've got nothing against an honest dollar. But when somebody says, I guarantee you, I can take you and show you a Sasquatch.
If it's a sales pitch,
do that. Now, come on.
If it's a sales pitch, sure.
I could take somewhere where people have seen a Sasquatch or where I have, but what's the chances they'd be there waiting on you so somebody else can see them?
Well, I can actually take you to a place like that because it happens every time we go in there. But it's been nurtured to that. It's that all the time, and it's very small areas that you probably won't see one, but you're gonna experience something. You're gonna see some sign, probably see a track. We find tracks all the time, and it's this last one, some really good ones, David. Oh man, 18-inch, all 5 toes, perfect big old human shaped foot. Just beautiful. And a few punch holes where you saw the rest of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I would 90% say, yeah, something's going to happen. You're going to hear something, smell something, see something that's going to make you stop and think. But yeah, to tell someone, yeah, man.
Well, that being said,
say that one time, 85% of the people, it had it down to a percentage. 85% of the people that go out with me see Bigfoot. That was a researcher that said that. Well,
wow.
Researcher.
But, Kerry, you may be the person that proves me wrong on that statement. And if you do, that's fine. Here we have Mid-South says, Kerry, have you seen Banner again?
I never saw him the first time, Mark. What I was looking for was not that tall. I was focused on the palmettos, were 5.5. Some of them were about 6 feet and some were about 8 feet. But the 6-foot ones, I was panning just over the top where my focus was. And when I caught Banner, I just happened to hold it there for long enough, about 10, 12 seconds, that he was back there, 80 yards. He's far off, but that camera brings him right in with the detail. And plus it took out all the shadow that was there that my eyes weren't taking out. So but I wasn't focused on something that was 10 feet tall with a green face. I'm looking for something dark, like, I'm learning as I'm going here. I'm not a researcher. If I was looking for a deer, it'd be different. But these are very, very, very much different, like hunting a person that doesn't want to be found.
Wow. Okay, let me get on down here, see if we missed anybody.
But I will be showing 3 images of Banner total from 3 different times in the new film.
Question for you this is another friend of mine from here in Oklahoma, David Perkins. Kerry, have you considered going turkey hunting again at the same place and time of your encounter?
No. I went back there and filmed where it all happened, told the story in the same place that it happened. But no, I'll never hunt again. I'll never kill another animal.
Kerry, is that on Bigfoot Odyssey's website?
Yeah, it's in our playlists. If you go to our channel and you see playlists on top, there'll be a bunch of stuff, Spook Week and Researcher Report and Late Show, and there'll be a drop down arrow and you'll get to our documentaries. And that's where all the documentary films are, from 1 to 13.
What's the one called?
Number 5.
It's number 5. I'm
yeah,
definitely going to watch that.
Hunter's Terrifying Encounter with Sasquatch.
Oh,
it's got like 300,000 views.
On These Woods Are Haunted, an episode of that, they were playing a bunch of reruns of that last night, and I watched the one about Mike Woolley's encounter. That has some similarities to yours, did it not? Or
50 miles.
Well, his was that's only 50 miles.
Through the woods, yeah.
Okay, one thing, and help me out here if you can. Of course, Mike, he's not with us anymore. I can't ask him myself.
Yeah.
But he made the comment on that documentary that high-pitched whistle, he had been hearing it for years, but nothing had approached him in an aggressive manner until that time. What did you know that gentleman?
After the fact, yeah. One of our old producers did a film with him before he died, about 2 months before he died, Scott.
Was there any indication that he said during any of that what might have been a catalyst that made these creatures react aggressively that time? Was he in a new place or? No,
and the corollaries that I draw with me and Mike is that it was very unique circumstances. Being in a place, hunting it for years, being in the same place. So I believe they knew who he was, had seen him do some things they didn't like, and we're going to let him know about it, the way they were messing with him, and they essentially ran him out. Same thing they did to me, but I only ever saw one. There were others around. I have no doubt that there were others around.
What do you, and of course we're entering into conjecture here.
Sure.
What do you think that they were seeing that they did not like? The fact that you were there, or he was there, or maybe killing another animal there, or?
Well, I had done some things different in my case. I had burned off this area, which I'd burned areas in there before. But burned this area off. I can't remember if it was a month before or 10 days before. It was a while before. For the turkeys, and I hunted a place I'd never hunted. It was way in the back, up on a ridge, hunting for turkeys, which I'd only ever done once. The first year I was out there, and I did only one day. And I had 30 turkeys coming to me, at least. It might have been more than that. I don't know. It was at least that many. So there was a lot of things in there that could have triggered it. Did he think I was going to take all the turkeys? Were they upset at me about burning the place off? Were they just upset that I was doing something different? The one time I can really remember doing something else different that I never did was there was a field to the left, big patch of trees, and then where I hunted to the right when you first come in. Well, I decided where I was going to hunt before I got there. I'd either go to the field or I'd go back there. Well, I was back there one morning. I said, you know what? I'm going to the field. So I cut through. and I was getting pelted with something. I never got hit, but I'd hear it hit off a tree, hit the ground. I just looked up the whole time, and for a good 100 feet through there, just things hitting. I think that was them throwing stuff at me because maybe I was doing something different. I was very easily patterned before that. They could really figure me out. But yeah, and I think Mike's situation was probably the same. I don't know what he did in there, but I know he had hunted that place a lot. And had, like you said, had heard that whistling for years, and probably them communicating with each other. I heard all that stuff. I was suspicious there were people messing around out there. That was a ridiculous notion if you knew the area and the people around there. But what else was I going to think?
Yeah. Man. How easy is the location of Kerry's encounter to be seen on Google Earth?
If you go to Collins, Mississippi, between Collins and Prentice, on the north side of Highway 84, there's a road called Dan Easterling Road. If you follow down that road to the second crossroads and take a right, it's right in there. That's the best I can tell you.
Now, Cornell has made it into our chat anyway. He hasn't followed a link on here that I sent him. Cornell, if you're watching, you can follow that link in here and ask in person if you'd like. Says, this isn't Kerry's encounter, or is it a different story?
I've told that thing so many times. I think I'll probably
that's you have in the past. That's why I didn't just come out and ask you for your whole encounter, because I know that you've went over it so many times. You might want to talk about something different this time. But if you want to share it again, you are more than welcome.
Everybody's heard it so many times. Man.
Right. That's why I didn't go.
The same thing.
I was recognized most all the names here in chat.
The effects it's had on me. I've talked about that more recently.
Right.
And the whole family.
And I've said too, my encounter, it was such a non-intrusive, not face-to-face, smaller individual. Had I had a encounter like yours, Kerry, where it basically very decisively escorted me out, I don't know how I would have reacted. The reason I say that, people say, if I was in this situation, I would have done this. Nobody knows how they're going to react until a situation like that comes up. Everybody's different on it. Some people may have a complete nervous breakdown. Some may go into denial. How many different reactions have you seen in your investigations into this, Kerry?
Well, if you have no awareness, it's extremely confusing to be there, to see that, to be realistically convinced, but still not know for sure that this is not somebody messing with you somehow. They're good at it. You're pretty sure this is what it is. I grew up, I saw Sasquatch. I knew what it was. I knew this is what people had been seeing anyway and reporting as Sasquatch, if that's what it is. This doesn't look like, this looks like a man with huge, and his head is way down here. There's a reason the Spanish missionaries called him the face on the chest of people, because it was just a apex.
Really?
And yeah. And that I
have not heard that. Spanish missionaries.
Oh yeah, Ponce de Leon era, 1600s in South Florida.
So Ponce de Leon, did he have an encounter with one of these creatures?
His men would write letters home about him. That's the only thing that had been said, where some of these letters were kept, and a lot of his soldiers would write home about these smelly creatures that left huge footprints, that they would clear 30 feet of the tree line back into the tree just to keep them at a distance, because they would see them moving around through the bushes in there.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know about that.
Wow. It shouldn't be wow. It should just be something we all know about. I hear that a lot lately.
That's the first I've heard of that. That's very interesting.
That I can attest to that. And a lot of the images that we've captured, same thing. The head is way down here. But what I saw walking up, I don't know how much of it was me being already sure of what I was seeing, and or how much it just looked different walking up, and what I was convinced of already, what I had seen, what I could see, what's wrong with him. All this stuff was in my head. This amateur that has no idea what he's doing. He's just lost and wearing the most god awful thing to hunt in. But there was a time that I thought I saw camouflage. There was, but it wasn't like I was so focused on him. I knew right where he was, and that he was trying to come up. I thought the only reason he didn't come up is because that 7-foot drop off, and he was tired, like he was lumbering. Big old country boy, fat,
Right.
bulky guy is what I thought. So, but the moment of transition wasn't long, but there were a few seconds in there where you're in disbelief, and then this has got to be somebody, and then you hear the sound, the voice, and you see these teeth and that are kind of long on the bottom and a little bit long on the top, like a gorilla maybe, but not quite so long. This really long, very Faustian looking face, like Scottie Pippen or the old images of the devil. Looking angry. The face changed completely from what I remember. Seeing it walk up and look at me and look back where he was going, then look at me again. And then from the time he came up, it was angry. He was angry and showing it very much. And I think that's what bothers me more today, is just knowing that there is this level of tolerance that you can breach with these creatures, and not knowing what it is what bothers me.
I mean, if we knew going into a place where we know that there has been activity of these things, knew what would make them mad and what not to do, that would be a big help. I mean, especially where you're at right now. My goodness, with that much going on around you, that's amazing.
Well, like I said, for me, I think it was a circumstance where they knew me so well, because I'd spent so much time in there, an abnormal amount of time I spent in this place. This is my church, my sanctuary.
Right.
I was perfectly fine by myself for a long time, and I had a terrible disposition and a terrible attitude toward life and people and God, and I was not someone you really wanted to get to know. And I knew it. That's the thing. It was all on purpose. It was very, very narcissistic and self-centered and selfish thing that I was doing. But I knew I was doing it. I was rebelling. That's what I was doing. I was being a child. And then I got shaken. I got shaken right out of my tree. But the only reason it even happened, I believe, is because it was me. And because of where it was and what I was doing. I think if anybody else had done the exact same thing I did that day in the same place, I don't think anything would have happened. I think it's because it was me that I was getting, because I think maybe they thought they were there anyway, just from our interactions, but I didn't.
Now, do you, and the reason I'm asking this is somebody asked me the same thing the other day, and I think they maybe in where Gary Spikes Sr. was in here, and his son was with him talking, and Gary asked me, said, so how do you tie these creatures in with your faith? And my answer was, I don't. Why would I?
Same here.
So
there's a lot of creatures that are out there that are not in the Bible.
Right. And I wasn't being facetious. These folks are friends of mine, but I'm like,
those are men.
I'm talking.
That's real men right there. Gary Spikes and Gary Spikes Sr.
Oh yeah.
That's two men.
Hey,
guaranteed.
Gary Jr., I've known him a long time. I sold him his first guitar when he was a kid. So yeah, I know those folks well. They're good people.
Mm-hmm.
But Gary Jr., he says, how do you, I can't remember the exact way he put it. If Gary's on here, he could say it, but it's like, how do you correlate this or, make it make sense within your faith? And I said, I don't. Why would I? And I was like, he goes, well, because God made everything on the world. I'm like, yeah, but if I'm I'm paraphrasing what I said. I said, but if I'm talking about bears or something else in the woods, I don't bring that into it either. And that's just
Right.
me. You know, I know there is a part of the Bigfoot mystery now where people are, you know, bringing that in. And that's fine if they want to explore that. Personally, I haven't felt that need. I'll just say that. But I was just curious your thoughts on that, if you've ever.
Well, I'm a firm believer that we were created and put here by God. That's, for me, there is no question. And maybe these things are what the Bible refers to as the Nephilim. Maybe this is the first iteration of us. Maybe this is the archetype, the type specimen that God used with himself to create us in his image. This all could be the case. Where they came from, I think, is going to be more of a mystery than where we came from for a very long time. I don't refer to any authority when I talk about them, because not everyone is going to believe the authority from which I'm preaching. So I keep that, my faith and belief in their place on this earth. Maybe these are the beasts of the field. You know, we don't know enough to know. And, you know, unfortunately, the Bible doesn't give us a good description of them and give us, you know, a straight answer. There's so much left to interpretation, even with the Nephilim. We know where they came from, but there's some of the depictions don't really match. So it's all up to you and your belief, and I wouldn't trounce on anybody's, because you could be right.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of that, you know, with all of that stuff. But I mean, the person that's put the most time into that is a fellow we both know, Scott Carpenter, has put a lot of effort into that theory. And
I know this. I use this all the time.
And I have a chapter in my book, Kiamichi Bigfoot, called "What Are They?" that I put out there with the disclaimer that I'm not advocating either of these, but these are some of the things you will hear if you look into it. So I wanted Scott's opinion. I called him up, and he was nice enough to talk to me on the phone about why he thought that. So anyway,
I've never heard a bad answer. He's talking about my opinion on the population of Sasquatch. There's another question there from Will Star Mysteries. How many of these creatures does Kerry think are in America to be a viable population? Are you there, Dave? Am I froze up or you froze up? Oh, Dave's froze up. All right. Well, can you guys still hear me anyway? Looking for comments. Just yes, we'll do. I can see that. Okay, Dave froze. Thank you, Cashew. Mark, what I hear a lot are numbers. Sasquatch. There's 63,000. That was one that I heard. Wow, I got to show all of myself. I look at other populations of animals. So the question I ask is, okay, don't look it up. How many white-tailed deer are there in the lower 48? Not Canada, just in the United States. And I'm not talking about elk or moose or blacktail or anything else, any other deer, just white-tailed deer in the lower 48 of the United States. How many do you think there are? And I usually get, well, I don't know. Well, I mean, you took a guess on Sasquatch, take a guess on deer, you know. And I usually get anywhere from 3 to 5 million. And it's 10 times that.
Okay, can you see me? I'm on my cell. The stupid AT&T internet just went bonkers.
I was just keeping the show going, man. I was answering this question.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Of course, it's time now. I'll get back into the studio.
Okay. Well, I'll keep it going. I'm almost done. I'm almost done with this one anyway.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I usually get that 3 to 5 million, and it's 10 times that. It's anywhere from 30 to 35 million. Okay. And that's the only reason they can estimate that close is because you can't count every single one. The states do audits on animals, and they do them every year. Some of them do like bear, they'll do every 3 or 4 years. But deer is an every year thing because that's how many tags usually they put out and our license that are available. You could kill about 1,800 to 2,000 in the state of Mississippi every year. And they base all that off past numbers. But that's how many there are. 30 million white-tailed deer. And how often do you see one of them? When you're looking for them. You think there couldn't be 1 million Sasquatch in the United States? Absolutely. I think there has to be 500,000 to 1 million. I think there has to be. I think it has to at least equal the black bear population just because of what we know of them and their proficiencies that we assume anyway. They're always hiding. That seems to be very evident. Not wanting to be found, this emotionally intelligent creature that is actively trying to hide from everything, that is self-aware. That's another thing. That's the big thing, especially when it comes to brain size, intelligence, being self-aware. There could be 1 million of these things out there. Just the number of sightings that are reported and their proficiencies. This is how I put this math together in my head, that there has to be a lot because we don't go off into the hard darkness. We can't get there usually. There could be no telling how many of these creatures live off in the middle of absolute nowhere. You know, we find them on the periphery and on the fringe watching us a lot. But I think I would not be surprised if it was 1 million. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 5 million. But I think there's a lot more than people think. You're froze again, Dave. To be viable, you know, that is so subjective and iffy because you're talking about habitat and we don't know what their metabolism or lifespan is. You know, people talk about diet. Well, you know, they'd have to eat 10,000 calories a day. Well, no, it's genetic. Cows are 2,000 pounds and eat grass. It's all genetic and what they can get from the environment. We don't know if they could process bark. We can't process grass. Maybe they can. So that's kind of to be viable. 10, I think, would be viable. Just because they're so human-like. And when it comes to survival and I know you're talking about the propagation of the species and what it would take to maintain them, but I don't think we have enough solid information. How many gorillas are there in the Congo? About 7,000 or something like that. I'm not sure on that. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not sure on that number. I don't think I'm far off. I don't think it's not in the millions. I know that, but you know, that's you know, their females don't estrus like human beings. Human females do. Human females only, by the way. Let me throw that out there. No menstruating men. Sorry.
Right.
If you're woke, I'm still asleep. I'm definitely not woke. I have nothing against anybody doing whatever they want to do. But don't tell me what I have to do. Don't tell me what I have to tell you.
Yeah, no kidding.
You want to pretend. You want to be pretending to something else. That's fine. Don't ask me to pretend. I ain't doing it. With respect, obviously.
Tell you
How
what,
do we get off on that?
second week, my cell phone has bailed me out. I tell you. Last week, though, it was my other guest's internet that was messing up. This week, it's mine.
Well, I got the hotspot. My internet's been terrible out here. I'm surprised it's as good as it is.
Yeah, well, my internet's AT&T. Well, I'm not at home. Thing is, if I'm home out in the wilderness where I live, I'm very pixelated. And if it's working right, it works really good here. But tonight it's gotten kind of wonky here. The
Well, you
last
seem to be
little bit.
back.
I'm on my cell phone right now. So
Will Star, you're welcome.
yeah. Do what?
I was just answering. He said, "Thanks for answering his
Okay.
question."
Yeah, if you see anything there that you somebody's
I haven't
answering,
been looking. I haven't been looking too many. How many people are here?
141 right now. That's a really good number for me, Kerry.
Cool.
Probably the most that I've had.
How often do you have shows? You have shows every Tuesday?
Yeah, I've been having them every Tuesday for about the past month, a little bit more.
Well, now everybody knows they can come here at Tuesday at 8 Central.
Yeah, normally, Kerry, I've been having around 50 to 60. So, yeah, way up tonight. Yeah, Will Star.
We broadcast it out there. We broadcast it out there too. I put it in the Facebook group. So
I appreciate that. Will, are you familiar with Will Star, Kerry?
I'm not. Not that I remember. Anyway,
he has built his channel up. A friend of mine from Ohio. He's telling me come up there. There's fiber optics, but anyway, he's built the channel up, and he does a lot of historic Bigfoot accounts on there, and he actually zooms in on the locations of all these. It's a very interesting YouTube channel, and he's built it up really fast. And we've had him in. Cornell and I interviewed him here a few months ago. But yeah, I've been doing the Tuesday night talk thing for a little over a month, I guess. But I was trying to get it on a night where you're not having your stuff and some of the other, because it's getting difficult not to put it on top of somebody else. But Tuesdays seem to be the night of other people having lesser activities, so seem to be a less intrusive night to put it. And that way I can still watch other people's stuff too, you know.
We just had a submersible pump go down. I'm sorry. They won't leave me alone about it.
Okay, you need to go, or
no? I got to take care of it. We're all good. Right. I haven't done a show this long in a long time.
Yeah, usually you're like an hour and that's it. So that's what I know you're
on Bigfoot Odyssey. We do an hour on Bigfoot Odyssey so we can not burn people out.
Well, apparently, we got hey, Will, he's always invited me and Cornell to come up, and it looks like he's inviting you too to come to Ohio.
Yeah.
But I've got something going in October. Well, I'm supposed to speak at the Honubby Bigfoot Conference. And of course, this weekend, if anybody's in Tallahena, Oklahoma, this Saturday, I will be at the Bigfoot Museum there doing a book signing, and we'll be talking with, whoever comes in and wants to talk to me. But my, Kerry, you know, what I do for a living, I've got a music store. I sell guitars and such. This year marks my 30th year in business. And me and the guitar teacher here, my son Elijah, a couple other guys, we're putting together a band, and we're going to do a concert in October to celebrate that 30th year.
Sweet.
So
that's awesome, man.
We're going to have our first rehearsal tomorrow night.
Like come jam with you guys.
Yeah, you ought to. What do you play besides keyboarders? That's your main instrument.
The radio.
But you play piano well, I've heard you.
I'm all right. So, I should be a whole lot better than I am. Playing for 40 years.
I tell you, folks here that may not have known, but Cornell and I did a podcast a few times here several months ago, and Kerry was our first guest on there, and he was sick as a dog, and still come on and was our first guest.
I remember that.
Feeling rotten. I felt so bad because I was like, man, I knew he felt bad.
Hey, look, dude.
You powered through it, you know.
I have I spent enough of my life worrying about myself. that making a few little sacrifices for the subject. You know, if I can offer anything at all, I hope I can. If it's nothing more than just not so much insight, but an alternate opinion, then to me it has some intrinsic value. So I'm going to do it. So I put my number out there for people to call. If you want to call me, I will answer the phone every time.
Yeah.
If I don't answer, I'll call you back. But I'm usually make myself available for the Bigfoot people.
There's Francesca. I see Francesca over on your chats a lot.
Oh yeah, that's Fran.
And
that's
welcome,
my girlfriend, Fran. She's up there in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I'd mentioned Cashew earlier moderating here, and that something to Sasquatch about. He's also a moderator, but he's been away for a little while. But I noticed him in the chat.
Cashew's a pro.
I tell you what, Cashew has superpowers as far as a moderator. You can just think something, and Cashew will put a link to it over in chat, and that's only a slight exaggeration. I mean, she.
I wish I made enough money off YouTube to pay her.
No kidding. I mean, she's always very gracious too, and I'm like,
we got quite a few good ones though. We got our main ones. Yeah, Lindsay Bay and Miss Diane, and Fran is a moderator now on our channel. Yeah, they keep our chat pretty straight. I mean, we get 400 or 500 people in there sometimes, and the chat's moving by. Of course, I slow it down to 30 seconds for each one, but they handle it. They do well.
Will Star Cashew is the goat of mods. Yeah,
she does. She's doing some producing for us behind the scenes, actually. So,
hey,
she has the opportunity to. We talked about
it. Cashew's getting some well-deserved praise tonight. So,
yeah,
for sure. But so do you still have activity going around close to your home, Kerry?
Oh yeah, dude. I recorded 3 tree knocks the hour before I left to go to Donnie Miller's just last week. I can send them to you. They were loud. Yeah. I was standing there at the front of my truck. I had my truck pulled up under the carport. I was loading it up, and I happened to have my phone in my hand, and I had the tailgate down, and I heard, wow, the same knock I had heard 2 years before. Same exact area. And I turned my camera on real quick and caught 3 more. And I'll see if I can hear it. They're pretty loud. I better turn it up. That would probably help, wouldn't it?
Okay.
Did you hear them?
Yeah. How far away was that from where you're at?
That's 50 yards behind my house, where there is nothing but 20,000 acres of woods. Freaked me. I mean, right before I left, and I'd heard one single knock 2 years before, and I heard that. I heard the first one. And then the second one was not quite as loud. And then the other 2, what you really heard on there. And they were all within 10 seconds of one another, 12 seconds. That was it. It was done. I had to cut that off because it's like 30 seconds of nothing else. But yeah. So they're behind the house, but I'm not going back there to look. I don't want to get none of that started.
Wow. Will Star has a question there. Where to contact Kerry about making a video of his encounter with his blessing, of course?
The best way is just call me, 601-215-0581, or send a text. You can email me at bigfootodyssey@gmail.com. You can hit me up on Messenger, Kerry Arnold. Those are the 4 main way people contact me.
Is that the same number that I've got of yours, Kerry?
Yes.
Okay.
My
Is it all right if I share that with Will?
Sure. I just said it.
Okay. Well, you said it very fast, so.
Oh, well, they can go back 601 215 0581. And if you crank call me, I'll just crank you right back. Done that before. Here's some heavy breathing. Just breathe heavy back. Sound like Darth Vader.
Yeah. Here's a question.
That hasn't happened. But
what does Linda think about the big guys being behind your home?
I didn't tell her. And she's here. So, or did I? Did I play that for her? She's not going back there either. So it doesn't matter. She mows the yard. Okay. And we have a 512-foot privacy fence around the backyard. It's a big backyard. So she gets out there and mows that. But on the other side of that fence, anybody going? I showed it the other night. You have to walk around to get back behind my house in the woods.
Now, are you down there in South Mississippi or?
Yeah, about 40 miles from the coast.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Down there on the 31st parallel there.
If anybody else in here has some questions for Kerry, I've ran out of things to ask him. So, so we're just having a conversation now. If anybody else has any questions, good time.
Yeah, the thing with Linda, she had to kind of give it up. She had some health issues she'd been dealing with, and we've been kind of getting through, and we seem to be getting beyond now, but she's going to start going back out with me on the traveling shows. But we're back on the road. So Bull Star, hit me up, man. You want to meet in October? I'm not sure if we have anything planned, but I've got a partner now, Mark Zasky with Crypto Reality. He and I are partnered up for Impossible. When we go to these places, he shoots stuff for Crypto Reality. I shoot an Odyssey for Bigfoot Odyssey, and then we'll take our investigation and advertise it on there. And that's going to be, it's going to end up being like $329 if you want to support us and watch but you'll still get everything you always got for free. We're just adding an investigation to it just so we can keep doing it, essentially, because it's so time consuming and expensive. And I mean, we don't have to explain to people why. I hope I get rich doing it, to be honest with you. I hope 1 million people watch the thing. Why wouldn't I? But realistically, as long as we can keep going, we'll keep doing it. And I know there's people that don't want to put their card out there. This is what you can do. Go to Walmart and get you a gift card, $20 gift card, $10 gift card, or $5 gift card, and use that. Just sign up with that card, and nobody's going to steal anything from you. If they do, they get your $5. Anyway, but there are a lot of people that just refuse to put their card out there, and I understand that, I guess, to a degree. As secure as things are now, but I use my credit card. That's somebody else's money. That's not mine. So if something happens, I'm not responsible for it. I would never use my debit card ever if I was anybody here. Don't use your money. Use their money, and then just pay the credit card off every couple of weeks.
Yeah, Mark Copeland from Livewire asked Kerry earlier, how big an old boy are you? That's so Roy D. Mercer. Well, I'll tell you how big Kerry is. After Kerry had his encounter with that Bigfoot will no longer go into the woods. Do you know who that is? That Roy D. Mercer, Kerry?
Oh yeah, I remember that. How big a boy are you?
Okay.
That's the first thing. The first thing when I pulled up at Mark's place, it was funny just to look on his face when I got out of the truck. Like I said, I'm not huge, but people don't. You see me here. I guess I don't look that big on the screen here. And he's just the way. Yeah, it's not the first time. A lot of people do that. They're just not expecting it, I guess. Because I mean, I'm relatively tall for a human being, and
what are you,
6'4"? Yeah, with my boots on, about 6'4.5", something like that. But it's the 250 pounds. I think that people don't expect to see. You see how wide my face is, my big old huge face. I'm trying to lose weight. I just I bought a juicer. I don't know if you guys have heard about this diet, but it's the celery thing where you get up in the morning on an empty stomach. That was the first, when I came to the oil field, I was 38. And I was really yoked up then. I'd not been out of boxing very long. And
you're a boxer. Okay.
Yeah, I boxed for about 3 years.
Wow.
That's why my nose looks like it does. Yeah. But I'm not a badass by any stretch. I learned how to box. That's all I did, pretty much. But I was a bouncer at a bar in town when I worked in the shop. When I first came into the oil field, I got to be a consultant finally, but I was in the shop when I was 38, just putting things together and helping build heavy tools. And my nighttime job was bar back. I wasn't official. I couldn't put my hands on anybody unless they put their hands on me. But yeah, I put that size to use a couple times. When people are drunk, they're easy to handle. So we lose Dave again. Wide receiver. Yeah, and third string quarterback. Not linebacker. Definitely not. I only played for a year. I quit school in 9th grade. I didn't go past 9th grade in school. There, he's back on his phone.
Yeah. My good old AT&T internet is acting up again. So
no, I was a weird kid in school. I was the tall, kind of lanky dude. That I was a musician, but I wasn't in the band. I was an athlete, but I didn't really play the team sports in school. I just kind of got along with everybody, and there was nothing cliquey about anything that I did. I mean, I had my friends that I was close with. There was 4 of us, and they all died in the same year, 1999, at the age of 26. Yeah, along with both my parents, same year. Grandmother, my boss, guy that worked opposite of me, is 9 funerals in 10 months. There, but the 3 best friends I ever had, and I went to school with, and I always hung out and camped and hunted and did all our stuff together and worked together. And it was a bad year. That's what started all this. That's what started me being who I was and who I chose to be after that. But it's just a cynical douchebag, essentially. I mean, most people know that. I probably got a hell of a book to write. What I'd call it.
Yes.
The Odyssey. Maybe one day.
There you go.
Homer's already got the Odyssey, so I don't know how well that would fly.
You know what? Here we go. Okay. My phone was still talking back at me. It's good to have that thing to fall back on. Good grief.
Man, that sucks about your internet there.
And this is the worst. It's usually pretty good. It has been being good. This AT&T, good grief. Will Starr has asked us several times if you played football.
I talked about that while you were
going. Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. All right. I saw that one. Malcolm E's got a question.
Malcolm. Hey, there we go. Malcolm's a friend of mine. He's from here close by. How many rounds would the fight have lasted if your Bigfoot had wanted to go somewhere else?
All 6 rounds that I had in my pocket. That's how long it would have lasted. No, there would have been no rounds. I can promise you that. The thing that I saw was so powerful. And I think that was the first sense that I got that this thing could probably pull this tree up and throw it at me was the rocking back and forth. And it I can't remember if it was fast or slow. I just remember him rocking a couple times and then lunging toward me with that. It was like a huff. from deep, but it was toward me. It was like a warning, I think, and that jarred me off the tree. And then he's doing this real fast, or maybe about like this, back and forth, but he's still got this tree in his hand, and I can hear and see this 10-inch pine tree doing this, 80 feet away from me. I think that was the true sense of power, and maybe getting me to 99% sure that this is a Sasquatch, or at least what people have been calling one. It may be something else. That's what that forced me into looking into other things, because I couldn't find anything decent. Sasquatch Chronicles wasn't out yet. Thank God for Wes Germer and Sasquatch Chronicles and what he's done for the subject. Finding Bigfoot did a lot on the front end with attention, but it just, on the back end, it hurt us a lot with credibility because they never found anything. Even if they found anything, they weren't going to show it. But I'm not blaming the guys at all. I think they're probably decent guys and probably decent researchers. But when it came to that show, they couldn't find sand if they fell off a camel.
Well, and that's a good deal. David Perkins says rocking back and forth sound like he's keying himself up for a fight.
Yeah, or just ready to go one direction or the other real quick. Maybe if I pointed my gun at him, he'd have been gone, because I think he definitely knew what that was. And that was another thing, is I had never had that shotgun in there and just got it. I didn't even take the plug out of it. That's how long I'd had it. But it was, I'd ordered it for hunting. It's a goose gun. It was a goose barrel. It was a 30-inch barrel, but perfect for turkeys. And it was all black, synthetic, vanilla. It was this big, I had to have the big. I shot a 7 mag at whitetail deer, You can kill elephant with that. So that's what I had to have overkill with everything. So I had this big black long shotgun that probably could have killed him with it, with the high brass number 4s. If he'd got close enough, I'd have probably blown his head off. And I was afraid that's what was going to happen, is I was at least going to be fighting this thing out of here, as far as I can make it anyway. There were definitely thoughts of these being my last moments. And that it's those things that stay with you. That stays, to me, it stays with a normal person. And I consider myself relatively normal, rational, thinking human being. I've definitely made my mistakes, and I try to acknowledge them all I can, because I think that's important too, that people know that, you know how to be a self-centered prick. I know how to be that person. I try really hard not to be that now. But that's,
well, we are all
something like that. Something like that will shake you out of that. And that's what I needed. And that's another thing, is it wasn't just, it's exactly what I had to see. I saw what I had to see to do what I'm doing now anyway, if that's the reason. If it ended up being that 10 years later that I started this odyssey of my own, was because it had shaken me, out of being that person and wanting to be better and do better and serve more than anything. That's what I wanted to do, was serve people. And if I happened to get something in return out of it, then that's what I was supposed to get.
Slicker 383 asked if you've ever, I guess both of us, ever investigated in the Mark Twain National Forest. I have not personally. Have you, Kerry?
Not that I can remember offhand, but something sounds familiar. It's something that I want to say Arkansas. Yes. I definitely want to say yes. Well, if it's in Arkansas, then I'm sure. You got to think places like Arkansas, some places in Oklahoma, Mississippi, East Texas, Louisiana. People are not going to report anything.
Let me reiterate. I think that's Arkansas. I could be wrong. So don't.
I've heard of it. It sounds familiar.
I could be wrong. That may be Tennessee or something, but
I think you should assume that they're everywhere. That's my take. Just assume that there could be one standing behind every bush out there, because I think there could be. That's how I would view it. That is how I view it. And it's probably has a lot to do with the way I feel when I'm in certain places. The humor starts to come out of me that doesn't normally come out. This funny side that I have to lighten up the moment.
Gene Hudson said they rock back and forth to keep your attention on them while others slip away. At least that is my experience. That
could have been exactly it. I know there was a few times there that I was definitely paying attention to what was on my left. I can remember looking to my left, just, the whole Jurassic Park situation becomes a thought when you're in a dangerous situation that you could be surrounded.
Yeah, it's definitely a different perspective when you're out there by yourself, especially last it was either late September, early October. I was on a solo camp, and this part's recorded. I can't remember the exact. I think I just titled it "Something's Out There." But at the edge of my camp, this is where Cornell, when he had came down, something which I believe was a Sasquatch, come down and approached his tent. But I heard something, and I turned my flashlight up toward this boulder field. Something ducked down behind this big boulder. My first thought was deer, black bear, but then it didn't go anywhere. And on the recording, I remember, and it's on there, I said, I'm not going up there because I was like, whatever's back there, I'm there by myself. It's late at night. And I just said, I'm not going to go up there and look behind that rock because whatever it did, it ducked behind it and didn't go anywhere else. And it was at least as big as me, which that's not big, but my thoughts were if that was a deer or a bear, it would have shot off from behind that rock and went on the other direction.
Right. That's the thing, man.
This ducked down and stayed there.
That is the importance of awareness. That right there. Because you knew it was possible. You're not going over there, no matter what kind of hand cannon you got or elephant gun or whatever. When you know what's possible, that's why to me it's important. Well, that and I know what it can do to you.
Plus, I'll ask this question. There is a group of people that have been actively in a very remote area down in those Kiamichi Mountains, actively trying to hunt down and kill one of these creatures. Where they are going, I've been there before, and it's like 9 or 10 miles from the nearest road, except for logging trails going in there. What do you think a person's chance of getting out of that area would be if they shot one of these things and tried to get that body out?
0.
I would not. I would, and that's what I'm thinking too. I'm not going to go look around that rock and try to shoot because I just,
Well, people, first, go ahead.
And I've said this before. People use the word aggression. Okay, yeah, there can be times of aggression, but some of these stories I hear, that's not aggression, that's defensiveness. And what I'm referring to is like historical accounts like the attack at Ape Canyon. What started that? They shot one of them. Mm-hmm. The Bauman incident that Teddy Roosevelt talked about. What happened before one of them was killed, allegedly, by a Sasquatch? They shot at it when it approached their camp. To me, that's more defensive than aggression. Now, what Mike Woolley reported, what you talked about, that was at least a form of aggression to get you guys to leave that area.
Absolutely.
But if I was in this area by myself, was approached by one of these creatures, and when Cornell was down, I know that there was at least 3 something around us because we heard wood knocks up the ridge from us, over down in the bottoms from us, and then something clacking rocks together in the creek before us. So say there was 3 Sasquatches around. I take shot and I wound one of them. I don't look I think my kids are not going to see me come home.
Yeah. I think it's happened. I believe it's already happened. These hunters you
Really?
hear about that have just disappeared. I think that's what's happened to them. Yeah. Well, I mean, why not? You're not going to live to tell about it. Um, that was actually one of the things I believe I was thinking in the moment, walking out of there. I don't remember a lot of the walkout, but it's like this feeling that people see these things all the time. They don't live to tell about it. This is just it's too nuts. It's too crazy, amazing. The whole thing comes down on you, and it rips everything apart around you when you're not aware, when you're not prepared for it. That's how much I know for me, and probably anyone like me, which is probably not very many of those, thank goodness. But when it comes to shooting a Sasquatch, first, how tragically stupid is it to go and try to kill one of these creatures just to prove they exist? Because it's not going to work. Even if you shoot one and bring in this body, where are people going to see it? On TV,
Right.
on some channel, some camera somewhere. You may convince a few more people, yes, but it's not going to be viewed as proof. I surmise that something is going to happen to it. It's going to disappear.
You may very well be right. But yeah, that's strange. Area X is a very interesting place. Strangeland, as far as I know, I was the first Bigfoot investigator to go down into that place before it was called Area X. And I spent a couple of nights down in that area back in, I can't remember, it was either 1999 or 2000. And what led me down there was I asked an older gentleman from an area near there if he was wanted to look for Bigfoot around here, where would he go? And it's a wildlife preserve is what it is. But I went down there. I got a local fella to take me down in there. And it is, I mean, immensely remote. I'll say that. And yeah, I would not want to be down there and trying to shoot one of these things. For sure.
Yeah, not anywhere, man. It just doesn't make any real sense when you really think about it. Yeah. Who was it? Shmeha. Look what happened to him after, purportedly shooting one of these creatures. And where is he now? I just don't think it's going to do what people think it's going to do.
You think his story's real? Smeha, or whatever his name is?
I don't know, man. I don't know. He tells it very real. He passed the lie detector tests.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about the same person? The person I'm talking
Smeha
about said he killed one and he did not pass the lie detector test, the one I'm talking about.
Justin Smeha. Yeah, he passed a couple of them.
Now, is he the one that had the blood on his boot and when they tested it, it was black bear?
I don't recall that much of it. It's been a while. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to stuff like that. I was more interested in hearing where a lot of my ideas came from. Fortunately enough, even though I did quit school in the 9th grade, my mother did something for me growing up, which was make me read. Mm-hmm. And that's because I read Faulkner and Chaucer and Virginia Woolf and Canterbury Tales and that's, I think that's where I got my vocabulary from anyway. It was from reading. But so I read a lot, Sasquatch blogs and lots of ideas and things that came out. But what got me on the whole, them being different in different places, was the Native Americans. If you were able to study the Apache Indians for a year and at the same time study the Sioux or the Blackfoot, there are going to be a lot of similarities, but man, there are going to be a ton of differences in behavior, religious beliefs, the way they live and go about life, the way they treat their kids, the way they trade with others or treat their enemies. There's such a dichotomy there. There's different languages because they were the same people, but they lived in two different places. And I think Sasquatch is the same way. I think down in Florida, where we go, it's easier to catch them on camera there than it would be anywhere else, just because they're so used to seeing a lot of people all the time. And they just sit there and sit still and watch. If you have no awareness, you're not ever going to see them. We don't see them and we are aware, but we get, we bring stuff that can see them, essentially. So that a lot of my ideas were formed from reading, not so much listening to a lot of other stories and that people were telling. Eventually we got into that, but in the beginning, for about probably a good 8 years, that was me reading as much as I could. And like I said, that's where all this stuff came from.
Question for you, Kerry, your opinion on government and military on Sasquatch.
I think there has to be, whether it's government or military that's actively keeping them under wraps. We're pretty sure that FWC is doing it down in Florida. The two retired FWC officers that we were able to talk to, they would take about 5 reports a month, and that was an average. Yeah, not all sightings. Some of it was tracks, but there was something. It was either a track or someone saw something. They got a really good look or a glimpse, or that they took a lot of reports. And that's why you see so many reports in the BFRO in Florida, because a lot of those were sent there. But they don't go any further than that with the FWC. And I think they've got these EMP devices either set out in these places that put out an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, to take out your equipment, to take out your digital camera. I mean, we had interference every night we were there, and it's in the middle of the dang woods.
Mark Copeland talked about that kind of interference at his home when stuff like that was going on.
Maybe it's them. It's them.
It's a weird deal. But my question, and maybe you've got a theory on this. Why would the government want to keep a hairy forest giant secretive?
Well,
I can understand lumber companies. That I could understand.
Well, lumber industry in the United States is about $40 billion a year.
Right. So see, I can understand that, because look what the spotted owl, did up in the Pacific Northwest. They set aside, and I'm all for that. I'm very environmentally minded.
But it cost them because they didn't keep it up, and all the undergrowth, and it burned down. When it did catch on fire, it was a tinderbox. Mm-hmm. So it hurt them in the long run. But you're talking about in national parks and camping and outdoor activities in 2019, we spent $986 billion in the United States. And that's a number you can go look up. Since COVID, it's gone down from there, but it's starting to come back. So there's a huge industry there. I would tend to lean more toward origins being the problem. Where they came from, maybe it says a lot about us, and where we came from, it does a lot to evolution and what they've been teaching for the last 200 years. It's going to do a lot to that. It's going to turn a lot of things sideways. But look, there's a way to spin everything, and that's all that's going to happen. No one's going to come out and say, well, yeah, we've been watching. We knew these were there. No, they're going to do the same thing they did with UFOs. We had no idea. We didn't know they were out there. They'd be liable any other way. You know how much litigation would be involved in that? Kidding me? I'd sue the hell out of them, and they probably know it. Just for keeping it under wraps because of what it has done to my life. Now, what I turned it into, eventually, or I'm trying to turn it into, I'm trying to do better, to be in the subject and trying to be a trusted voice. That's why we put all our stuff out there for everybody to see. We're not holding anything close to the vest. You're going to get to see it all eventually. I just for me, it's a matter of putting it in a film and making it presentable.
Charlie, let me answer his question real quick. Charlie, in Washington, yes, on paper anyway, the Sasquatch is protected in Washington State. Whether they're being serious or that's a tourist thing like the Bigfoot trapping season in Oklahoma is, I'm not sure. Question for you, Kerry, and I'm really trying to get as many of these questions as I can here. Kerry, can you say anything about Donnie's place?
Yeah, they're out there. We heard talking the first thing. And for me, first getting there, I guess there's a level of complacency because I'm different. I don't try to be, I just am. But I'm okay when I get there. When we got there, our camp just set up, and Donnie had taken us over to what he calls Jeff's Corner earlier that day before we went and filmed his Odyssey and got our camp all set down. And when we came back later and put it all together, well, he took us across the creek and down, and I saw a huge rich lighter pine knot on the ground. It's good for a fire. It's just full of creosote, and you just hit it with a match and it lights right up. So I was like, all right, well, there's some fire starter right there. So I remembered where that was. So when we came back, I strapped my pistol on, got this wood splitter axe, and was headed over. And I probably got 40 yards away from camp. And I heard it. And at first it sounded, I thought it was dogs barking because it was two like coughs, like that. And then it was talking, like, stop me in my tracks. And if I didn't already know where I was going another 20 feet to get that, I would have probably turned around and left. But I went down there real quick and I hit it like hard as I could. I was slinging that axe, like 4 hits. I busted it in 2, and I was going to stay there and chop it up, but I just grabbed it and drug it back. And as soon as I crossed the creek right there going into camp, Mark said, "Man, did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah, man, I heard it." Yeah, it was like 100 yards away. I was like, no, I was like 60 yards because I was 40 yards closer to it than he was. After that, I was no good. I was no good to anybody. And it was more of where we were and not expecting to be that far out in the middle of nowhere and then experiencing that. And with that just being the beginning, there's this, you're filled with this anticipation all the time of something about to happen, and little things would happen. There's a lot that's going to be in there that we talk about. And I did a funny segment. I think it was funny anyway. It was funny to me about the 3 layers of mosquito protection. That's going to be a whole segment with 3 different chemicals and the hippie stuff too. So I thought it was funny anyway, but that was what was starting to come out of me, was that humor, lighten up the mood, lighten up the situation. And it was something that stayed with me for a couple of days. Last Friday's show took it down. I couldn't, I watched part of it and I was like, that's not me. That's not the Kerry that people know. And I didn't want them seeing it. And it was a great show. I heard everybody said it was awesome, but I couldn't. I wasn't going to, because it was me being somebody that I wasn't, not intentionally. It just came out of me, and maybe that is who I am in those situations. But I didn't like it, and it's my show. We're gonna do that one again. Yeah. So people just expect that in return, that I will be back to do my show. I say my show, it's our show, and none of it's mine. Me and Brad.
Yeah, Chris, you are right. Mosquitoes can bite through blue jeans.
Depends on how much permethrin you got on.
Yeah.
Tick spray and bug spray, but yeah, they'll bite you. Horseflies, man.
Dude, those things are
just the worst.
Horrible.
They as soon as they hit you, they're biting your ass. You
or
go to spot them and they're gone.
Or wherever they happen to land.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're biting yourself
Yeah.
is what I should have said. Excuse my language. I'll put money in the jar there.
Well,
But yeah, horse flies and deer flies, man. As soon as they light, they're biting, and it still stings. It hurts. But I got bit by a spider twice. One got
what
in my
kind?
boot.
What
I don't
kind?
know. I just know it was a spider bite because it turned white in the center, and now it's all dark.
You guys
So,
don't have recluse spiders down there, do you?
oh yeah,
Do you really? The brown
black
recluse?
widow. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got. I mean, fiddleback. We call them fiddlebacks here in
Fiddleback,
Oklahoma. They are.
closet spider.
I've been bitten twice by the brown recluse or fiddleback, whatever. Um, Luckily, nothing rotted off. I got bit on my left shoulder 2 years ago, and it swelled up pretty good, but I got over it. But yeah, those are thing about the fiddleback. Unless you press against them, their fangs aren't big enough to really penetrate the skin from just biting, unless you lean against them or something. And I hit the jackpot on that one last 2 years ago. And
Spiders, and snakes, and all that stuff don't bother me. Never really has. I would belly crawl through thicket just to get into a place, man, with my rifle.
Chris Kimball, everything in the South can kill you.
You let it.
Yeah,
It sure can.
Hey, one thing I tell you, Kerry, that I am very thankful for. I do not have reaction from poison ivy or poison oak.
I don't either.
And it's weird. When I was a little kid, I did a little bit, but then as I got older, somebody had it. I thought, I can't remember the last time I had that. So me being me, I grabbed some of the leaves and watered them up and rubbed it on my arm, and nothing came of it. So I'm like, for whatever reason, and I'm thankful for it, I'm not bothered by that. And I don't mind snakes if I see where they're at, But
Sorry.
a small round of.
I got night guys out there still working, and they're wanting to know what to do. So
Okay. Well, it's time for you to get.
no, I mean, I just texting them, telling them what to do. If you're ready to end it, that's fine with me. But I'm still fine. I'm still good.
Well, as long as you want, as long as I'm.
It's your show, man. How many you got now?
I've got 149. I've had not really. It's staying right around 150 plus or minus just a few either way. And I'll say I've got a lot of new folks, seeing them in the chat here, and I know Kerry brought them over with him, and I appreciate that.
Great folks, man.
Hope you'll check my channel out and find something of interest. I've been doing this Tuesday night talk. Cashew gave me a suggestion earlier. I've just been titling it all Tuesday night talk, and then under there with the thumbnail, the picture of who's going to be on there and all that. And Cashew suggested that I need to start calling it Tuesday night talk with so and so. That's a good point. So I'll have to look into that. But,
well, when you start getting, to me, it doesn't matter how famous they are. If they're interesting, I want to have them on the show. So a lot of people that I talk to on the phone, most of the people I talk to don't want to do the show. They want to talk about their experience, and I'm here for you.
Right.
Most people just want to call and tell their story to somebody that's going to believe them. And apparently they feel like that's me. It is, because I believe all of them, every single one. There's no way I could tell someone they didn't see what they saw when I've seen it.
Hey, thanks, Diane. Thanks for stopping by.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Diane. She's awesome now. But that's what I do. So most of the people I talk to don't want to do the show, even though I ask every time anybody calls, hey, you want to come on the show and talk about this? This could be interesting. Mm-hmm. So I at least do make an attempt to make it interesting. So that's one thing that I would tell you is I wouldn't worry about who you get as much as I would have someone that I think is going to make an interesting conversation.
Well,
I'm not saying that's me either. I'm just saying I appreciate you bringing me on the show.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you having me on your show. I enjoy good conversation with good people anytime. But yeah, what I'm hoping for is Saturday when I go down to the book signing, I'm hoping to be able to sit down with Tanya and just record an interview with her about her experience there, because it was, and I hope you'll watch that last week's and just bear with her. It's not my internet acting up there; it's hers, which is aggravating there for a little bit. But it's well worth powering through it and listening to her story. It's extremely compelling, and not a lot of people have an encounter where they're face to face with someone no more than 30 feet away in broad daylight. And that's really something. And just the emotion that she was feeling at the time. I mean, there's no question in my mind that she's very authentic.
That's a lot to unpack, man.
Yeah, it was.
That's a lot of harsh reality.
When she was wiping tears out of her eyes and stuff, and when she was like, "I thought it was going to kill me," I'm like, "Oh my goodness,"
That's legit, dude.
That
is a legit feeling. And it's not so much that you're going to die, as it is no one's going to know what happened to you. You're just going to disappear.
And in her story, seeing her husband would be away at work, for a while during the week, and she'd be there by herself, and she thought it was like prowlers or people just out there in the woods messing with her. And if you watch the interview with her, you'll see this. But she was walking down this dirt trail like toward a creek, what I remember of it, and her little dog comes running at her, and she reached down and jumped up in her arms, and she said the hair was standing up on the back of her neck, and she said, "I knew I was going to turn around and there would be a man standing there." And when she turned around, she saw just its arm disappear into the tree line, and then it stepped back out into the middle of the trail as she was looking, and just stood there and stared at her. And I said, "Well, what were you feeling?" She said, "I thought I was going to die. I thought it was going to kill me." Now, she said it didn't make any move at her, but she said, "I felt like it wanted me to see it." And it stared at her a while, and it went back into the woods. She just said she said between 7 and 9 feet tall. She said it was massive, and it was cinnamon colored. And its face was not like an ape's face. She said it was very human-like. So
there you go.
But yeah, that's
not all of them. I know that's not all of them. They don't all look like that. Some of them do look apish. Some of the images that we get in Florida, very, like I said, the guy I saw looked like a human until he didn't. It was almost like a transformation, like a different face. But it was because he was angry and everything was exaggerated, and I was really getting a good look then. But it's that's just it. There's so much. Donnie Miller, 3 feet, was 3 feet behind him. He had to look up. When I did the intro for his, I want to say, well, it was I was without Linda, so I had to do it all by myself. It was on this episode of Bigfoot Odyssey. We're in the Florida Panhandle with Donnie Miller at Standing Goats Rescue. And I just went into his Bigfoot Odyssey has spanned 4 decades, from being knocked off a bike when he was a kid to being escorted out of the woods to standing face to chest with what he described as a caveman. Just something to that effect anyway. It's all recorded already. But just that last part, face to chest, because he turns around and he couldn't see it because it was dark. He had his light pointing down, but he couldn't see anything else either. It was blocking out everything. And then he looks up and there's this thing, and it's shaking its fist at him and stomping its foot. It's pass out time. That's call in the cleaning crew, because there's going to be crap everywhere.
Mm-hmm. There was a gentleman and his wife that were in my store. It's been a couple of months now, that had moved down to this area, and they had moved from Oregon. And I've got my books for sale in there. And the wife was thumbing through one, and she said to her husband, "Tell him about what happened in Oregon when we lived there." That's where they're from. He said, "Yeah, I ran into one of those things." And he was very serious. I said, "Oh, you saw one?" He said, "No, I ran into one of these things." He was out behind their house running through the woods for whatever reason at night and ran into the chest of one of these things that was standing there. And him and her, they were both, if they were making it up, they were very good liars, because they were very soberly telling me about this. You know, as he was making his way back to his house through the woods, he said, "I literally, it was beside a tree, ran right into it." Now, if they were telling the truth, that is something else.
Well, look, man, what's the motivation otherwise?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right, look, this is not something to be famous for. You know, I'm not saying that we're famous, but in the Bigfoot community, people know who we are. That's not a reason to be known for running into one of these things. Not yet. We haven't gotten there yet. So to make that up for I don't know. I know people have probably done it, and have probably stretched out and exaggerated other tales where they had experience and they made it a little bit more than it was. But I mean, over time, it's what actually happened is no more. It's how you remember it. It's what you remember happening then. That's with me and my encounters. What I remember. The very first time I told my encounter, I didn't remember waving at it. I didn't remember pulling the thing off my face. I didn't really start remembering all those things until I did the thing with Barb Charlton, the therapy. And because she wants you to get that feeling, you know, so she can help you get through it.
You did therapy on that?
Yeah, several times. Yeah. But it's emotional freedom techniques, like acupuncture without the needles, pressure points. And it works. It worked for me anyway. You have bad nightmares. Linda woke me up one night. I remember this one. There were several of them, but I remember this one vividly, where she woke me up before we ever did anything with Bigfoot Odyssey, and was shaking me, wanting to know who I was screaming at. I wasn't screaming at anyone, but it was during this time that there was a lot of things coming back to me, feelings like these things are around. I get, like I've said 100 times, driving down the road, just look over into the woods and get that washed over feeling. And there's no way I could control it. It didn't matter what I thought. This was going to happen to my body. So she helped me a lot with that. And when Linda and I first started, I was very adamant about not going to look for Sasquatch. I said, I'll go to people's house, let them tell their story, show their evidence, whatever they've collected. We'll hear their story and see where it happened. That's what we'll do. That'll be our thing. And so that's what we did. Now it's not deciding, I guess, to just finally get up and go do it as much as it is. I feel like I've got the means and I've got the opportunity and I have the knowledge of the people that know what to do. It seems kind of wrong not to do it. At least try to get something better for the subject, because the same old stuff kept getting rehashed over and over and over again. You'd see the same old stuff, and that's still happening. We need some new same old stuff. So that's why I stopped caring about what they were and what they do and how they live and what they eat. I don't care. They're out there. Let's go get an image of one, a good one. So that's been the charge that I've taken on, this mountainous task, but it's been done and we did it. It's just not quite good enough, but we're going to work really hard to get it better. And the main thing for me is time. It's driving. It's planning is one thing, getting everything together, making sure it's all ready to go, going and shooting. And for me, it's more than just going and turning the camera on. I have concern with what's the camera angle, how's this going to look, how's the story coming across. These are the things that fuel how the rest of the trip goes, is like, especially in interviewing, how all this comes out is going to fuel how we go out and film. So that's a lot of time in it, and then get it home, put it in the timeline, and start cutting it up and putting it together where it's going to make sense to people. There's a lot of work to it. And that's my sacrifice, I guess. And the investigation, people are going to have to pay for it. That's the only way. That's all we've got. There is no funding for Sasquatch research. I don't clown anybody that gets $1 out of putting their time into this subject, because all we have is the public. That's all we've got. Yeah. And there's plenty of people out there that want to support us, that I think will watch it and be enough for us to keep going. I hope 1 million people watch it. It'd be that much more we get to put right back into equipment and research and buying other people good equipment that are out there doing it. That's another thing we're going to be getting into is raising money for, like, people making their own GoFundMes for specific researchers for specific equipment. Mm-hmm. Sisters of the Moon, they've got one out now, and I got to get the link from Debbie so they can get a good thermal for them to be out there. So I mean, it's a shame that we have to rely on the public and the people that are interested to help us do this, but I put as much into it as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Without
I don't have any thermal stuff. That would be Mid-South says, Kerry, what's your opinion on Sasquatch and infrasound?
There are plenty of animals that do it. Why not? Why not these guys? They've got huge lung capacity, apparently. The vocal range, I think they've got to do it. All infrasound is, it just means it's too low for us to hear. That's all it means. So it's not a force, so to speak. I think it can be in the right frequency in broadcast, but it's a very long wave that has an effect on the human body. It does a lot of things, different things to different people. But can they do it? Yes. Can they exclusively do that? Tigers don't. Tigers, there's an audible growl in there when they do theirs. But can Sasquatch just do infrasound? Maybe. It seems there are a lot of instances that line up with it being that. But again, all these things are subjective, especially when it comes to eyewitness. That's why I don't put any stock at all into people typing these things. If you want to type them, fine. You can do whatever you want, but don't get upset when somebody else types them some other way. We don't know enough to study them to nail down that, yes, this is this type and this is this type and this is what these do and this is what these do. That's right. Impossible. I don't think it's possible to do that with these creatures. They'd have to let us into their little world, and I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Thank you, Brian. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
for sure. I thought infrasound. Let's see. Mid-South had a funny one up there. He said he's on a dating site and says the first thing he asks is if you believe in Sasquatch. He said maybe that's why I'm still single. So.
Hey, that's on you, man. There's somebody for everybody out there.
Yeah, whether we want them or not. That's a joke, by the way.
I found mine. She's texting me right now.
There you go.
She's
my wife, she doesn't think anything about the Bigfoot thing at all. She didn't think anything of it at all until she saw, my books actually sell. And then she's like, well, you should write another one. So,
just keep cranking them things out.
Well, I
had to go to bed.
Want to get good material.
I had my mic stand and I broke it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking I had ideas for another fictional book, not about Bigfoot, but just another type book. But I'm thinking of pursuing like another, the nonfiction, because I've been looking into this subject for a long time. I think I've got enough to come up with another. And also, I asked the lady, Tanya Kordak, how she would feel if I did a chapter on her experience and the inspiration to open up the Bigfoot Museum, and she was all for that. So uh, I think that would be a good one too. And maybe do a chapter about your experience. You know, if you are
Knock stuff
so
out.
if you are so inclined.
Yeah.
Um,
Hook it up.
but yeah, I
Whatever you
mean,
want to do.
you know, I'm encouraged to. The new book, Kiamichi Bigfoot, has been selling um, to me enormously well. So I mean, hey, if people are interested, I'll write another one. You know, that's it. I mean,
That's great, man.
if nobody had read it at all, or um, you know, I would not be inspired. But I mean, you know how it is. If people want to read it or hear it, you want to oblige them on it.
Yeah, for sure.
And give them
I
something
just
worth reading.
I'm gonna have to struggle to find the time to do that. For me to write a book, I couldn't be in it. I couldn't be in it enough to make it what it would probably deserve. The
With
kind of
this,
attention that it would deserve. I don't have the time. I
well,
have to decide to do this. I'm doing the traveling and filming for people,
I
for
tell you
us.
the way I am, Kerry. I cannot get home after work and sit down at my computer and write. I have to have a complete day off that I can get up before daylight, no TV, where I can just, you know, do that. And I'm very temperamental. If I'm not feeling creative, nothing comes out, you know. But if, you know, if your mind is calm and you've got a time you can sit down and devote to it, you know, the words flow. But
Right.
otherwise, it's like doing art, you know, or playing music. You know, if you're not in the mood to play your guitar or piano, it just doesn't feel right, you know. So,
Absolutely.
know if that, I'm sure that makes sense. You're a musician.
Oh yeah, it does. It actually it makes a lot of sense. I'm Linda's jukebox when I go home.
Oh,
Yeah. She has some song she wants me to play, and it takes me a couple hours to figure it out. And then, all right, so there's this song for you. And then she had been recording them and putting them on Facebook. So humiliating enough
but
being her jukebox, but being everybody else's too. Because I mean, I'd sing to her, and I'm not a good singer. I can play the piano okay. Singing.
see, my wife, if I sang to her, she would just flat tell me, "You're not very good at that. You shouldn't do that." She's brutally honest. You know, that's part of her culture. You know, she, like I've told you before, she's from South Korea, and she's extremely honest about things like that. She will not blow smoke. You know, she'll say, "No, you're good at that, but not that." But
Yeah, Linda pretty well does that too. I'll tell you, that's the biggest thing I liked about Daniela and wanting to do with the show with her is that she didn't pander
oh yeah,
to anyone. No. She would call out something if she felt it was off. And when we had the Facebook group before we did our first live show, and that's why I'd asked her to do it with me, is because first I knew she could produce it, and second I knew she wasn't going to just let anybody say whatever without some question or not resistance. We had a couple
right.
that I try to be as nice as I possibly can,
You do a good job at it.
but I'm not going to let someone sit there and rattle off a bunch of facts without a little bit of digging and questioning going on. And I did that to one of our guests, and it was perceived badly, I guess, because I just wasn't buying everything he was trying to sell. He called himself a cryptozoologist first. That's my first. Why? You didn't go to school to be a cryptozoologist. You have to call yourself that.
Right.
Okay. And now, to me, all that is just more, it's a bloviating ego to make yourself sound like an expert. And I would just rather someone not do that. It's not helping the subject and the situation. Anyone new coming in, these people are not stupid. They realize all these facts you're telling them and can't show them anything. You're telling me about specific markings on a Sasquatch, and you can't turn the camera on. Really? That's how I feel about it when I'm listening to it. So I know there's a lot of people out there like that. So they just it ends up turning people away. So it's not a good thing to act like you're this expert on something that you just can't be an expert at when you have nothing really to show. We all have our ideas, and then being asserted as those to me is important. That these are just ideas. All I can tell you is that they're out there, and there are some things that I'll talk about that are self-evident, and maybe some comparisons that I will make to facts. But that's how it has to be. We have to gain people's trust back that we're not just a bunch of idiots and rednecks out there beating on trees and screaming in the woods at night. We got to get beyond all that, and that's what's taking time.
This is a new person in my channel here. Has infrasound even been a part of a Bigfoot discourse? I never heard of it before this recent Bob Gimlin video.
Somewhat, it's a faction. I think there are people that believe it, and then there are people that that aren't sure. But it gets talked about for sure.
Joe, no, I don't think so. I don't know what you're meaning.
168 hours when we go shoot 168 hours in Florida in November. Are you going to go with us?
No, well, I haven't been invited, but I can't anyway.
Yeah, you have.
You've been invited. Okay. I'm just being self-employed. I just can't get away as much as I like. That's why my focus is on Southeast Oklahoma, because that's a couple hour drive, if that, from my house to any of the areas down there, and I can do it. Now, I would love to if I win the lottery or something, and I don't have to come to work, Kerry will be sick of me. I can promise you that.
That will make you pay for everything. You hit the lottery.
I tell you what, if I hit the lottery, I would happily do it and still make you be like, man, Dave, ain't you got to go back to Oklahoma anytime soon? Well, when it gets too hot, I'd be trying to find a cooler spot.
Fran knows my whole name.
Hey, Michael Kerry Lee Lewis Arnold. Yeah. Kerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah.
I guess Francesca knows you well.
Fran. We talk. My first name is Michael. So I don't know why my parents never called me that. My mother called me Kerry. And then I had a brother Kevin and a brother Kyle. And it's the Irish connection, I guess. As I'm about 25% Native American, and
really,
yeah, on both sides. Both my parents are 25%.
Wow.
Both my great grandmothers on either side are full blood.
Cherokee and Choctaw.
Yep.
You married to a Chippewa?
She's one of a kind.
Well, I'm Cherokee a little bit. If you see pictures of my grandfather, he very much looks Native American.
Mine too. He was half. My grandfather was half Choctaw, and very dark complected. My mother had black hair. Was light complected, but my grandmother's last name is Riley. So my mother's mother was Irish. So yeah, that he had such a deep voice. You know, I've got a relatively deep timbre, but it was like, and have my uncle, his son, Uncle Jimmy, same way, just said deep.
Wow,
just the way he spoke, very soft spoken, carpenter, that kind of guy. He could spoke French and German, and played 4 or 5 different instruments. He played the clarinet and the piano and the French horn and the guitar, and just played. He was that guy.
Wow.
So but my great grandfather, my dad's grandfather, was on his side was from Belgium, Norway, I think, in that Norwegian area. But he was a big old 6'9" guy.
No kiss. So you're short guy compared to him.
A real Viking type of guy.
Wow.
But I think that's where I got my size from.
Apparently. But yeah, my grandfather, he was I don't know exactly how much Cherokee, but enough. I mean, he looked at. And you remember the Clint Eastwood movie, The Outlaw Josie Wales?
Oh, sure.
Okay,
Hundreds of times.
Chief Dan George.
Mm-hmm.
When he would start talking and telling the story, and Clint Eastwood fell asleep, that's exactly the same voice, the same manner of telling things that my grandfather had. And I remember when my kids were little, we was watching that. I said, and I, put it to that part of there. I said, "Who is that guy?" And they was listening to me. They go, "That's Papa." And he did. He'd get that far away look in his eyes. He would recount parts of his life, and just like Chief Dan George, And
well, so much of their tradition,
well,
so much of their tradition is oral.
Yeah.
They didn't write these things down. They had to be good storytellers to get their point across. And he was one of them. Absolutely. Chief Dan George.
Yeah, he was
that guy.
He really was a one of a kind now. That guy was.
What was that, 76, 77? Josie Wells?
76, I believe.
Yeah. Good man. I've seen it hundreds of times. Hundreds of times.
I can recite a lot of it, But yeah, I'll tell you what, Dan George was as big a part of that movie as Clint Eastwood was. For
yeah,
sure,
man. Missouri boat ride, all that stuff. I remember the whole thing.
Well, Kerry, I'm going to have to jump off here because I got to drive. I got 30 miles to drive to my home.
Oh, wow.
Tear this down. But, Kerry, I appreciate you coming on and visiting as long as you did. This has been
thing, man.
This has been great.
Enjoyed it. I'm glad I had the time to do it.
Yeah, I really am too. Everybody in chat that's new and otherwise, thanks for coming on. Thanks to our moderator, Cashew, as always. You do great. Everybody else, if you haven't, I encourage you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you have a report that you'd like to send to me or share with me, send it to bigfootandmore@yahoo.com, and I'll be glad to look at it and add it to my files anyway. Kerry, anything you want to say? Check it out.
No, we got a lot of stuff coming though. It's just taking time to put together to make it decent, because I don't want to put out anything that's crappy. So
yeah,
at least it'll be decent in my gray eyes. So
yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. Well, everybody, good night. Kerry, thanks again, man.
You bet.